Good. So now we have some time together to continue with the text. This kind of text, traditionally in Tibet, would not be made publicly available because there's always a danger of misunderstanding what is said. Therefore, it's important that we really try to be clear about the meaning and don't mix it with anything else. Of course, in our mind, we can see links to some aspects of Western philosophy or psychology, and it's not wrong to see these connections, but I would suggest you need to keep it in a different register, in a different file in your mind. As we probably all know, when we read Buddhist books, they put a lot of emphasis on the purity of the lineage. And this is because if we mix our own ideas and ideas from our culture in with the Dharma understanding, after a while, it's difficult to know the difference. And so far, our own ideas and beliefs of our culture have not led to liberation from samsara. So we're probably going to be most supported and sustained in our practice by having a very clear idea of precisely what is said in the tradition. Many of you will know what has happened to the word mindfulness, a term which had a very precise understanding in the different schools and traditions of Buddhism. And now some aspects of the Buddhist understanding have been mixed with psychology, with some kinds of research, so that there is a standardized approach to what is mindfulness. It becomes a treatment, or something which can be sold, a commodity. This is not good according to the tradition. And of course, there's a danger that the same will happen for Dzogchen. So for our own sake and for the sake of others, it's important that we know how to listen and to receive the tradition as something of value in itself, which doesn't need the addition of our own thoughts. Moreover, with the virus, many people have experienced a lot of lockdown, and due to this, they experience tiredness, flatness of mood, and often a difficulty mobilizing to do practice or study. We should try to make use of these kind of experiences. They show the vulnerability of our life situation. Sicknesses, accidents, degeneration of the sense organs, and so on arise very easily and often without warning. We don't know if we will feel stronger and healthier in the future. So we have our situation of today, a chance to really understand how the mind is working, so that very simply and gently and precisely we can ease ourselves away from excessive activity. In Britain, anyway, I hear a lot saying they long to get back into their usual life, where a lot will be happening, which means also a lot of attachment and involvement and distraction. So we have a little window of opportunity to be less busy and to see how the mind is by itself. So in the traditional example, if there is a muddy pond and you leave it, that gradually the mud will sink to the bottom and the clarity of the water will be revealed. It looks as if the water was dirty, but the mud and dust was floating in the water. It wasn't actually contaminating the water itself. This is the same with our mind. We have many memories, feelings, thoughts, and so on, which fill our mind. And when this opaque quality, this cloudy water, muddy water is there, it is as if these experiences of thoughts and feelings are all there is. When that seems to be the case, then we want to develop water purification systems. And there are many methods to do this, but they all involve agitating the water. Now, if we want to see the clarity which is intrinsic to the water, it's more simple and more straightforward to let the water show its clarity. So this is the central point of the Dzogchen approach to meditation. So which is where we had reached last time, the section on meditation. And I just repeat the first short paragraph of it, that meditation itself is simply to stay present with the non-separation of how you experience yourself to be and your true nature. So to begin with, we should stop the activities of our body, voice, and mind. We tend to have more control over the activities of body and voice than we do over the activities of the mind. So we can kind of bring ourselves to a state of sitting quietly and not saying anything, but we find that our mind is still quite active. So then he says, pray to your guru who has all the necessary qualities. You could pray to Tara or Chinrezi, Padmasambhava, any deity. The main thing is to have some faith. The basic principle is that the teacher or the deities have already found what you are looking for. Therefore, if you connect with them, you have the chance of observing how they are, and that then reveals how you might be. Everyone has their own awakening. This is unique and specific to the individual. And yet, there are many methods which are already in existence, which we can make use of to find that doorway into opening. Some of these are paths of lonely endeavor. That is to say, you have to sit and do a lot of practice on your own, being aware of your own limitations, trying to purify them, and so on, or trying to develop specific qualities, such as developing generosity through repeated offerings of mandala. These are all methods to take you to somewhere where you are not yet. But in the Dzogchen tradition, we look on the teacher and his meditation deities as not different from our own mind as it is now. The teacher is your mind. What does that mean? The mind shows a lot, but you can't quite grasp it. That's why the teachings say don't judge the teacher. This is not that you have to enter into some fantasy about how wonderful the teacher is, but from your own side, you can observe what happens to you when you judge. You develop a particular kind of certainty. This is good, this is bad. I know. The judgment seals you in yourself. So that's what we want to get out of. When we say the teacher is yourself, when you see a teacher, you see light, you hear sound, and they seem to be available, hopefully. So their mind is spacious with thoughts, feelings, not blocked, but not coagulating, not going sticky and building up some fixed positioning. Samsara begins with construction, with this gathering together of aspects and entities in order to build pictures, and on the basis of that, the sense that there are truly existing complex phenomena. The whole construction of samsara, these 6 realms of all the different kinds of formations of sentient beings, all arise from just one point. This is the initial point of existent. Here is something, or this is. It can be in the object side, this is, or subject side, I am. Neither exists in a formulated way at that time. It's in fact just a very simple is. What is? If the is was allowed to vanish, the question, what is it, wouldn't arrive. It is the intensified belief that is significant and is the presence or the embodiment of something which becomes the basis for accumulation. So this first point is, it's called Dag or I in Tibetan. And this is central to our understanding of how to meditate. You're sitting, many experiences are arising. Many of them seem very familiar, very reassuring, and they invite you to engage in further construction of ideas and plans and understandings. So when he's saying avoid activity of body, voice, and mind, it means be aware of the seductive power of the invitation to construct more. So when your attention starts to settle on a particular thought, this is setting up a pathway for the addition of further thoughts. In its simplest mode, it means is something, and then secondarily there is like or not like. And then various kinds of mental activities arise as you try to get more of what you like and less of what you don't like. So the first point in meditation is to recognize how active the mind is. The mind is activity or movement. It is just doing this. If you think this is my mind, it should be the way I want it to be, then you feel a desire and an obligation to make it manifest the way you like it. So our first mood or quality that we want to bring up is renunciation. That is to say, we renounce the sense that this is my mind, these are my thoughts. There are thoughts, but they only become mine when I claim them as mine. This claiming as mine is what in the Buddhist text they call attachment. It's a kind of fusional attachment. You merge into it, you get involved. So the first thing that we practice when we're sitting is just to be uninvolved. Not me, not mine. That doesn't strongly control the volume or intensity of what's arising. You're not trying to calm the mind in terms of lessening the amount of stuff that's moving through it, but rather when you see, I don't have to be involved, nothing to do with me. Like in the old days when you might go to the airport and you're waiting for the announcement of your plane. You see people getting up when there's an announcement and going off towards the flight gate, but you don't move because it's not your flight. So the more we practice, the more we realize that we don't have to get on any plane. All kind of invitations are announced, but we can just keep sitting. We're not going anywhere. The thoughts are going somewhere. The thought is not here, then it's gone. Now, if you are tracking the thoughts, you maybe turn to the right, you see the thought is coming and you see, oh, now it's here. And then you're going to the left, oh, it's going now. The thought is moving and you have been moving with it. So that's a more subtle form of attachment. You're observing, you're not emotionally involved, but you're still being influenced by the passage of the thought. So we want simply to have our relaxed, open, panoramic gaze. And while whatever is arising is there, It's present and then it's gone, as if you are a mirror and your mind is showing the reflection of the transient objects that pass in front of the mirror. The mirror reveals without itself moving and without any prejudice of what it will show or editing of what's arising. So when he's saying, pray to the guru who has all necessary qualities, it means use the energy of your mind, which gets dispersed into identifications with many phenomena, outer and inner, and keeps the movement and turbulence of samsara going. And we gather this attention into one focused devotion towards the teacher. We gather ourselves, focus into the teacher, and then dissolve into the teacher. We merge by relaxing and opening to their mind. We say the mind of the teacher is like the sky. So we open sky to sky. So very often, if we're practicing, we do this with this Guru Yoga of the white R. So we could do a little bit of this just now. Sit in an easy way with your spine supporting your weight, so your muscles are very easy, breathing normally. Our gaze is open into the space in front of us. We're not staring at the wall of the room, but we simply let the gaze rest in the space. And then instantly you imagine a white letter R in front of you. This could be a Tibetan letter R or a capital A. The function of the R is that it represents the mother sound. We can see other sounds as being variations on R. When the breath is coming up through the throat, it can be very quiet, or we can make it a little more noisy. So it's and so the sound itself comes in, just the naked breath becomes the sound of ah. And then on the basis of this ah, you get mama, papa, and so on, all the words of the world. This is like an X-ray of the beginning of samsara. This first is that I was just talking about, that there is something. It's like ah goes on to the production of language supporting all the concepts with which we fabricate the structures of our existence. And of course, the wonderful thing about the sound is it's dissolving in the moment of its manifestation. It is self-liberating. So when we see this symbol of ah, it is the emptiness of all phenomena which is revealed through their impermanence, through their vanishing. On a relative level, we can say that all the phenomena of the world arise from causes and conditions. And on a more direct or absolute level, they are instantly here in their shining emptiness. Now, this ah as emptiness has around it this familiar 5 colors of light that we have everywhere in the Tibetan tradition: white, red, blue, yellow, and green. And these represent the energies of the 5 elements, of the 5 wisdoms, the 5 poisons, the 5 skandhas. The 5 wisdoms arise in awareness of the emptiness of ah. The 5 skandhas or aggregates, which we can consider to construct the identity of a person, they arise in the experience of not seeing the underlying emptiness. Ah is the basis of everything in samsara and everything in nirvana. So these 5 colors of light are shimmering in circles around the white letter ah. These are, of course, symbols, but the function for us of the practice is not to think what do they symbolize, but to have them as an immediate reminder, mnemonic device, which brings the actuality of this potential into our presence. All of this potential is here in front of us. Then we make the sound of ah together 3 times, allowing the ah to flow slowly out of us. It's a very open, empty sound. And it dissolves all the accretions that we have built up through language, our conceptual edifices, which fill our ordinary consciousness. So when we come to the last sound of the third ah, we allow this ah that we have imagined in front of us to dissolve in space, and we rest in space. So outside is open sky, inside is open sky, and the meditation is simply sitting sky to sky. Okay, so we do this together for a little. Okay. That's a very simple practice you can do again and again. At first, it's good to do it for 2 minutes and then maybe for 5, and you can gradually do it longer. But it's not a practice that you are struggling to maintain a particular experience. The key point is that this openness of the mind, it's a fresh awareness which is empty of any inherent content, is unobstructed. Nothing gets in its way because everything is appearance in this sky, like rainbows, like illusory forms. And the mind also is unobstructing. It has no intention to make certain patterns happen. Whatever comes, comes. So while you're sitting, you allow your mind to be as it arises. It's your mind because this is you, this is your life, this is what's happening for you. But it's not yours as a possession to be controlled. So then when we get up from sitting or when we just relax and we're more aware of what else is going on around us, this is movement in the space of the mind. when we see everything as a movement in the space of the mind, we see that, oh, it's here immediately. So these are these two basic principles in Dzogchen: the primordial purity, the open emptiness of awareness, and the instant showing of this patterning and that patterning of sound, sensation, colors, and so on. Because what is showing is empty, it doesn't become solid. Because the empty mind is showing, it doesn't become a mere void. So this very simple practice opens a gateway in which we can fully participate in life as the unfolding of the energy or potential or generosity of the ground. So we don't want to hold on to the empty aspect, nor on the other hand, do we want to hold on to the aspect of movement. So in terms of when you finish reciting the 3 R's, and you merge your mind with that of the guru, because the guru is nothing other than the presence of Ah. Then Chetsangpa says, in that state, do not pursue past ideas. Do not wait for future ideas. If you're thinking about the past or about the future, you always have duality. I am here thinking about the past. I am here thinking about the future. If what we might call a memory arises in the mind, you could say, oh, that is about the past, but actually it's immediately here. If you stay here and now open, what we call the past and the future is here if it is in its direct simplicity. So he says, keep your present awareness free of all artifice, letting it occur easily in its own fashion. So again, we return to the image of the mirror. The mirror is not harmed by having something horrible or ugly put in front of it. The reflection of the horrible thing is in the mirror, but the mirror is not contaminated. So for whatever reason, maybe say you had the thought of killing someone, suddenly came in your mind. It comes in the mind, and then it goes. It's gone. It's not the basis for doing anything. But if you take it as something, which, as hopefully you remember, is the first of the 5 poisons, the stupidity or mental dullness or opacity of seeing a substantial reality in what is occurring, the intensity of this reified experience calls us into either of the 2 main responses. Either there is desire that we think, yes, I could kill someone, and that creates potentially an intention, a mobilization towards that activity, or we have an aversion to the presence of the idea. We have this, and I don't want to have thoughts like that. I'm not like that. This is polluting me. So then we want to get this out. What are we getting rid of? The thought is already gone. What we're fighting with is the thought that such a thing should arise in my mind. So this is the central point for meditators. This mind is not your mind. Many things arise. Whether you like them or don't like them, it doesn't matter. What will you gain by being happy with a good thought and sad with a bad thought? The one who has these reactions is the ego self. The ego self is exactly the clinging on to something as existing in truth, clinging to something. But what the something that it's clinging to is something it believes in, but it's just there and it's gone. What is there to believe in? When your mind is not like the sky, it's like a small container. Now, if the container is small and there is a sudden burst of energy inside it, you get a vibration because the energy goes to the wall of the container and hits it and bounces back, and it does it from both sides. Now we relax, the mind is like the sky. In the sky, there are clouds. I'm not in charge of the weather. I want to go for a walk, but now it's raining. I can put on a waterproof and walk in the rain, but I don't want to walk in the rain. I want it to be dry so that I can walk in the way that I want. The more specific my menu for life is, the more I come in conflict with the actuality of circumstances. This is why our meditation instruction is don't get involved. The one who gets involved is the ego. Awareness, like the mirror, doesn't get involved. We do the practice in order to awaken to our unchanging awareness. But if we sit in the practice, getting involved, then we are actually feeding and strengthening our sense of being an isolated individual ego. So he's saying, let the mind move about however it comes and goes. Do not modify it with good thoughts. Means don't apply an antidote. So maybe you find yourself distracted into a stream of selfish thoughts. And then suddenly there arises the thought, may all beings have food and clothing, may all beings be happy. If that thought arises just by itself, okay, because it comes and goes. But if it arises because you suddenly feel bad that you've had a stream of selfish thoughts and now you want to make some rebalancing, then it's not so helpful. And then he says, do not mix your awareness with bad thoughts. Now, we have to accept that he's talking about things which are beyond language, because awareness doesn't get mixed with bad thoughts. So in the mirror, you see a picture of you see the reflection of someone being murdered. This doesn't affect the mirror. But we might think, oh my God, what is that? The one who reacts is the reactor, which is the individual ego self with likes and dislikes. By not reacting, it's not that you are condoning or approving of a negative action. Rather, you're relaxing in the intrinsic equanimity, which is the openness to everything which arises in its equalness as emptiness. If you believe that the bad thought is really bad, then you believe that it's real. If you go to a horror movie and you see people running around with chainsaws, then you might feel some sympathetic anxiety. Oh, I don't like this. I wouldn't like that to happen to me. This is the voice of the ego. These things happen. We live in a world of great cruelty. It's not that we are indifferent in the sense of we don't care, but if you care while believing that this is very real and very bad and shouldn't happen, then your own emotional reaction is intensifying your sense of the dualistic structure of the world. And it probably doesn't change very much in the world. For meditators, strong emotional reaction is not a sign of virtue. It's a sign of a dualistic involvement. Our goal is to relax and to see directly the emptiness of all phenomena. As long as sentient beings believe that their social situation is real, that their suffering is real, then many terrible things happen, things which shouldn't happen. How will we stop them? I think, without being cynical, I think we can see that actually bad things keep happening. For example, Britain doesn't dismantle its own ships, old ships anymore. It sends them off to India and Pakistan. And they wait for the right tide, then they run the ship aground onto the beach. And very poor people come to work carrying bits out of the ship and using oxyacetylene burners to cut the metal plates and so on. There is no health and safety officer there, as in Europe, to make sure the workers are safe. If the workers get injured, they just can't work, and so they have no money. So that's a new kind of suffering, which you have from Chernobyl, from all kinds of modern inventions bring their own shadow of suffering with them. It's not that we are practicing meditation in order to become cruel and unkind. So we say, I don't care, nothing to do with me. There is, of course, a lot of suffering. And we can see the situations in which that suffering arises. And on an ordinary level, a dualistic level, we believe if only we could control these circumstances, we could stop the suffering. But this is not the teaching of Buddhism. If we go right back to the Four Noble Truths, there is suffering. This suffering has an origin. This suffering has a cessation, and there is a path towards that cessation. For the second one, the origin of suffering, the Buddha says it's due to ignorance and attachment. He doesn't say that suffering is caused by bad people. He doesn't say it's caused by consumerist capitalism, nor that it's caused by communism and state control. These situations are vehicles for the experience of suffering. And of course, it would be wonderful to have a world suffering. But there are so many factors which create suffering for human beings. It would be very difficult on the level of complex manifestation to bring about an end. In the traditional example, they say if you want to get rid of a tree, you don't try to pull off all the leaves. That would take too long. And while you are taking off the leaves on one side of the tree, they're growing strongly on the other side. You can try to cut the branches. You can even cut the trunk of the tree. But maybe next spring, little shoots are again coming out of the side of the trunk. If you want to kill the tree, you cut the root. So this example is offered to us that we have to cut the root of ignorance and attachment, and therefore becoming agitated with emotional reactions to circumstances that arise in the world or in our mind is not going to be very helpful. So that's why he's saying, keep the mind uninvolved with seemingly negative thoughts. And then he says, however it presents itself, do not modify it in any way. So when he's saying, however it presents itself, remember the mirror. The mirror presents itself with this horrible, horrible reflection. But the mirror is not horrible. So however your mind is, whatever is revealed, stay with the awareness, stay like the mirror. The ego itself is a reflection within the field of reflections. Awareness has never been touched by or contaminated with the ego self. The ego self is an empty arising. Awareness is unarisen. It has never been born as a thing. It is the emptiness of awareness that allows it to reveal everything. It has no specific content of its own. Whereas the ego is always trying to grasp onto a specific content of real, good, bad, and so on. Okay, let's take a break now. And if we back at 1:45, so that's 25 minutes. Good, see you then. Okay, so then he says, keep your mind clear, happy, brilliant, naked, bright, open, tranquil, and relaxed. And this might seem like a contradictory instruction. as if this is something which you have to do, you have to cheer yourself up. Some Dzogchen teachers advise you to cheer yourself up because sinking, depression, anxiety are very porous, and you're more likely to absorb negative ideas about how life is and so on when you're in that state. However, any artificial intervention you make will bring its own problems. So this sentence is actually for us a kind of litmus test, because what he's saying is this is how the mind is in itself. Like these are the qualities of awareness. So he's saying the mirror is always like this. The reflection is not like this. So relax into the mirror. You don't have to try to make the mind bright. For example, sitting in your room just now, maybe you've been in some thoughts in the break. There's the space in front of you, quite a small space, but space is space. Relax in the space. You feel the space of the mind. The mind is, if you like, the site of the hospitality to all that is occurring. It is the clarity of the mind which does not obstruct whatever reflection is arising. When you're in a mood, whether it's exciting or depressing or in a kind of inward state, the identification with that mood is the limitation of your receptivity. As you relax out of the mood, your receptivity increases. Now, this is difficult to do. You feel that this mood is you. This is how I am. I'm just like this. That is the authentic voice of the ego self. Ego self is involvement. That's what it is. But that is the quality of the reflection. We want to open to the mirror. The mirror doesn't do anything. It doesn't maintain any particular picture or content. So although in Tibetan they use a verb for keep, like shak, like to stay with this or stay in this, we have to hear it as don't stray rather than fight to remain. Just don't stray. We have to let whatever comes pass through. Like children in a classroom, one child pushes the child sitting next to it, and the second child pushes back. The teacher only sees the second child pushing and shouts at the child, "Don't do that." That child then says, "I only did it because he did it. It's not my fault." The teacher says, "I don't care whose fault it is, don't do it." But when you're a child, if someone pushes you, it seems completely automatic that you should push back. So again, when events arise, the ego will be like that. The ego is reactivity, because the ego doesn't have an autonomous existence. It is a nodal point in this polarity of subject and object. It's always in reactivity. So if you are in your ego self and you read this instruction, then you're thinking, oh, there's a lot for me to do. I have to try to be bright and open and relaxed and so on. So nowadays, we don't send children, at least in our own country, into factories to work when they're very young. We would say that is child abuse. So if you read this Dzogchen text and you think, I have to keep my mind clear, happy, brilliant, naked, and so on, this is ego abuse. You're asking the ego to do things it can't do. The ego can pretend, but it can't do it in an authentic way. That is why he said, pray to the Guru, and you can do that again and again. Whenever you get trapped, don't try to free yourself by struggling. If you relax out of the ego identification, you find yourself in this authentic primordial awareness, and that has these qualities. Then it says, keep openness as void happiness, immediacy as clear happiness, and potential unimpeded. So this sentence is dealing with these three terms, which are in Tibetan, it's Ngowo Rangjin Tukje. We touched on it last time. It is openness, sometimes is translated as essence. It means when the mind is completely relaxed and uninvolved, even in any form of appearance, it's just like a completely open sky. Then you have a void happiness, or the happiness of emptiness. Now, of course, some people within their ego fixation experience a small taste of emptiness as a cause of suffering. It seems to be a loss. If I'm just open, I don't have anything. Now, this is pervaded by a subtle happiness or satisfaction or non-disturbance. And this is very important, because when you open to this, you have what the texts call evenness, which is a non-reactivity. It's just equal. Why would you go this way or that way? It's just equal. You are still and the world goes by. So it's not perturbed. And from this, or with this, you have immediacy, which is the expression or this immediate presence of emptiness as clear happiness. So clear is very important here. Clear is like when you look outside, maybe if you've got a window, or even you look across the room, you see the wall in the room, you maybe see a table or some flowers, whatever you have in the room, but you don't see the space. The space is not a thing which impacts or impinges on us very much. So between me and the wall, there is a kind of unobstructedness, which ends with the obstruction of the wall. In the space between me and the wall, there are no hooks to catch my concepts. I don't say this is a tidy space or a dirty space or a hot space. It's just space. It's clear. Now, when we get to the wall, we can make opinions arise about what we see, maybe a bookshelf or paintings, whatever. I see something. And on the basis of seeing that something, I have opinions and values and so on. So actually, we don't see any somethings. We think somethings. We have projected our identification into what we take to be there, which we looked at the last weekend. The wall is clear. It is the clarity of diversity. Well, when we, in the text, you often come across the term clear light. So clear light is the experience of looking across the space. The light is so clear we don't see the light. But when the light hits the wall, we think we see something. What we see is colored light. So in the text, it describes this as the 5 lights, or the 5 colors. Just as we had around the white letter R, with this light of the 5 colors as the potential of emptiness, the potential of the clear light manifests as color, and the color has a shape in terms of patterns, which is there as a diversification or a showing of the potential of the clear light. Now, this diversity of appearance is a bit problematic for us, because if you were with us last time, we were looking at how ignorance moves from the basic sense of something to the development of concepts and names, words, which can provide a precise identification to an appearance as the appearance of something. So I look across the room and I see a bundle of papers. I have the concept of papers. On top of that, I have the concept of, oh, that's a lot of work waiting for me. And someone else seeing them might say, that's a mess. Let me tidy it for you. That would give me the possibility of manifesting as one of the more wrathful forms of Padmasambhava. Do not touch my papers, because what they mean for me and what they mean for someone else is probably very different. But that meaning is in me, it's not in the papers. When I die, whoever has the difficult task of getting rid of all my papers will hopefully just put them all in a fire. They mean a lot to me, but not really to anyone else. So there we see, when the diversity of the five colored light, which of course becomes all the shades of light, it is as if the diversity of pattern is indicating diversity of substance and value. Now, when you see directly, oh, this is my mind, this is the flow of the energy of the mind which makes these papers sing for me and not for other people, then the meaning or value is now. It's meaningful because of the connection between my I, the formations which arise for me as how I am, and the papers. So the papers themselves are devoid of inherent significance. The significance arises in the interplay, the co-presencing of subject and object. And when we see that subject and object arise as the energy of the mind, they are not two separate things. They are de-reified, and so are an evocative play of this moment. They are freshly emergent, both the subject side and the object side. There are no enduring subjects and no enduring objects. And this is the happiness of clarity, that if you would try to solidify the world and invest a definite meaning in something, then you bind yourself into a web of signifiers, comparing and contrasting and weaving across the three times. Now, that here we have the question of knowledge. Knowledge is emergent. It arises into the picture as one of the aspects. And so you can have the brightness of knowing how things are and what is important because it arises for you like this. When I was a child, my father would often say to me, James, how many times do I have to tell you this? But I wasn't living in the world of my father. In my mind, what he said was not very important. And in his mind, what I was doing was not very acceptable. So there you see, these are two matrices of interpretation which don't have much crossover. And when we do agree with other people, it's because our interpretive schemas coincide. There is an elision. So in terms of clarity, we have to see that what is clear for me is not clear for other people. Each of us lives in our own mandala, full of significance and value and the possibilities of manifestation. And this is not occurring for other people. They may have some proximity to our world, but generally speaking, it's something quite different. And with the other sentient beings in the six realms, the birds and the fish and the cows, we can see that what registers for them is not what is registering for us. So this term clear is very important. It means a revelation, like the revelation of the reflection in the mirror. The mirror itself is, if you like, clear light. You can't see it at all. What you see in the mirror is colors, patterns of light. You imagine an identification of these patterns. You look in the mirror and you think, oh, that's my face. But clearly your face is not in the mirror. There's a pattern of revelation. What it's pointing to here is the whole world is patternings of revelation. And how they are interpreted depends on circumstances. So we might think that hunting seals is very bad. You see pictures of people beating little baby seals to death with a stick. But for the people who live in that area, that might be how they make their money. No, but killing seals is bad. I'm a member of the first church of the risen green man. 100 years ago, you had missionaries coming from the church of the risen Christ. Say, Eskimos, you should worship Jesus. Now we don't do that. We come and say, Eskimos, don't kill the seal. Because it's always nice to tell other people what to do. Clarity is the opposite of this. It is not dogmatic. It is not propositional. If you stay present with this bright clarity of the revelation of your own existence, it is bright and detailed. And what are revealed are the circumstances of how your energetic movement within that can occur. So this is the third aspect. He's talking about the unimpeded potential. That is to say, when you go into situations, which could be a business meeting or a conflict in the family, and you have a strong opinion which manifests as a fixed position, this is not unimpeded potential. This is the impeding of the potential in the name of truth. I'm only criticizing you because you're wrong. This is my concern for you. So you can see the narcissistic inflation, the structural blindness embedded in that position. This is not to say that you can never have some evaluation of the ethics of a situation. It's not to say that anything goes, but this identified issue is niched within this field of revelation, which is grounded in emptiness. And if I forget the ground of emptiness, then the seeming truth and the necessity and reality of what I believe becomes oppressive to other people. That is to say, if the potential that you have for manifesting is arising in relation to what is here, the wider field, as a co-emergence, it's likely that the synergy will be ethical. But if my potential is prefigured, it's likely to lead to conflict with others, which brings us into the polarities of winning and losing, right and wrong, dominance and control, and so on. So that's why it's vital to keep the empty openness as void happiness, the clarity, and then as you manifest in the world, there is an attunement which is intrinsic. Without any set object of meditation, remain without wavering for even an instant. We're not following the breath or visualization. We remain without wavering, whatever is occurring. The mirror has no agenda. It shows whatever arises. Now, what is wavering? Some kind of a hesitancy. This could be about the past. A thought comes in your mind, and then another thought comes thinking, oh, that's not good, or I should have done that. Or there could be some anxiety about the future. What will I do? How will I speak? The key thing in that moment is to recognize this is a little double move. You are thinking about something which has happened or which might happen. Co-emergence is in the moment. There is no wavering in that. So as he said earlier, don't go after past thoughts, don't wait expectantly for future thoughts. We are used to seeing ourselves as the individual ego agent manifesting through our body and speech. All that you are as your ego self is movement. Movement is always moving. You have no secure, stable ego self. You have no fixed individual identity. This is not a Buddhist belief. It's how you see it. If you just look, you think, oh, I'm unstable. What is stable is awareness. So wavering, as soon as you become aware of that dispersal of your energy or feelings of hopelessness, excitement, and so on, these are signs that you are immersed in the flow, immersed in the flow. So then he explains how to deal with this. This Lama Chetsangpa was very, very, very intelligent and compassionate and helpful. So he says, if thoughts arise from that state, these thoughts are without foundation or root. So look clearly at the actuality of whatever arises. Whatever is occurring while you're sitting in the practice, it's arising from the mind itself. When you are praying to then doing the Guru Yoga, you see the mind is like the sky. The sky is infinite. My mind is infinite. The mind has no foundation or root. And what arises in the mind also has no foundation or root. Thoughts are the appearance of emptiness. Feelings are the appearance of emptiness. So he says, so look clearly at the actuality of whatever arises. If you really enter into the openness of the mind, you see this is basic or primordial. This was the first of these 3 points in the previous paragraph. There is no other source. Everything arises as the play of emptiness. So when you find yourself not believing this, when you feel overwhelmed by some patterns of thoughts or feelings, maybe dissolving into a mood of hopelessness or despair, he says, look at the actuality. How is this? Not what is it? Because then you pull yourself into conceptual identification. But if you stay present with this mood, you see, oh, it is movement. Like going into a river and sitting on a rock and just feeling the water washing over you. There are moments of anxiety, moments of depression. These are fluctuating and touching, but going. This is transient. This is how it is. I feel terrible. I can't bear it. I end up like this again and again. It's awful. From the point of view of meditation, this is an artificial construct. Of course, if your friend says something like this to you, you have a lot of compassion for them, maybe try to help them. In a sense, their real problem is not that they have a susceptibility to a depressive mood. Their problem is that they don't leave it in its naked state. They enter into a cooking of it, an elaboration of it. This is something. And because there is something I can attribute a value, this is terrible. And because this exists, I can bring it into comparing and contrasting it with other things that exist. Last year was the same. Always this time of the year, I get really sad and upset. I don't know why. Now, we can understand these storylines or these beliefs. They explain something, they illuminate something, but they are unhelpful in that they confirm you are a truly existing subject, and this is what punishes you or tortures you in this life, and you are suffering in your own little skin. So what we can see, if this happens to us or if it happens to other people, you see how conceptual elaboration, idea upon idea upon idea, diagnosis, interpretation, creates a solidification of the transient moment. And the problem with this solidification is If you are solidifying something pleasant and good, you become somehow heroic. Oh, I have really good meditation. And if it's conceptualized as something solid and enduring and bad, you feel hopeless and worthless and think, I can't do this. So you might live by the sea, but for some reason you're afraid of the water. Every day the sea is there, open and inviting. No, I don't swim. I don't like swimming. And this conclusion, this concept you develop about yourself becomes a barrier to ever going into the water. So this is how we limit ourselves. So before he was talking about unimpeded potential. That means not bringing conclusions into your mind so that constructed knowledge or pseudo knowledge becomes like a wall in front of you. It is the somethingness of the experience which is the primary delusion. So he says, without accepting or rejecting, remain relaxed and open. This links with the previous sentence, because it's only if you see the empty actuality of what is occurring that you have a non-conceptual protection from these two moves of acceptance or rejection. This is an illusion. You go to the cinema, happily paying money to enter an illusion, but something occurs which you take to be unpleasant and you say that is horrible, but it's an illusion. It's an unpleasant illusion. How can an illusion be unpleasant? There's nothing there to be pleasant or unpleasant. The illusion, excuse me, the illusion only becomes pleasant or unpleasant when you forget that it's an illusion. Because when you say it's horrible, it is horrible. There has to be an it. No it, no comment. So this is the point here. When he's saying, without accepting or rejecting, remain relaxed and open, it's not like being hyper vigilant and observing your tendencies to accept or reject. The relaxation and openness is maintained by non-reification. Non-reification is natural. Reifying is an activity. So when the mind is relaxed, there are no things. That doesn't mean there are no patterns. The patterns are the patterns of the five colors, the play or the potential of clear light. They are pure appearance. Because they are pure, they don't tell you what they are. And that's why samsara and nirvana are not two separate countries. Any appearance can make someone happy and make someone else sad. A friend of mine, I was talking on the phone and she asked me, oh, what are you eating tonight? And I told her, and she became sad because she is on a diet. She wasn't thinking about what I was eating. She was thinking about what she had decided she was not allowed to eat. In this way, in daily life, you see again and again how we trouble ourselves by solidifying the world. If you practice too intensely, the problem of many wild, excited thoughts will develop. So remain loose and free. Loose and free doesn't mean slumped, but it does mean that the muscles can be relaxed. If you get your posture right, your skeleton will carry the weight. And in particular, the diaphragm area and the muscles in the solar plexus should be relaxed. Because if the breath is moving in an easy way, you won't get excitation developing. And then he says, if you are too relaxed, the problem of sinking and dullness will develop. So remain alert in the presence of awareness. So this is what happens when we start to meditate. We tend to go to one or other of these extremes. Now, of course, if you have something concrete to focus on, you can bring your attention to that. Here we are relaxed and open, and allowing whatever comes to come, whatever goes to go. So it's likely that your energetic system is adapted to maintaining focus while there is something definite to work on, as if you were doing some exercise routine and you work away for a few minutes, and then the leader of the group says, okay, now relax, and you come out of that. It's not about tight and release. The mirror is the middle way, open but not falling apart, present but not tight. So the only way to understand what this means is to practice, just to enter into it again and again and see for yourself what it's like. And we are talking here about the Dzogchen approach to meditation. Dzogchen is not a path of antidotes. So you can see how he has described it, but as I already said, it's impossible to say these things precisely because individual experience is so different. So, for example, say you find you fall asleep when you meditate. You might think, this is hopeless. I must try harder. So I'm not going to sit on a cushion. I'm going to sit on the hard floor. Maybe I'll open the window so the room's a bit cold. And I'm really going to try. Before I sit, I'm going to think, I'm going to die. I don't know when I'm going to die. I must make progress. This would not be helpful for this kind of practice because you are artificially tensing up in order to overcome a tendency. You are fighting with your pattern. You're not collaborating with it. So, what is this tiredness? You can sit and be as present as possible as your body gets heavy and your head drops. You could even film yourself, put your camera and your mobile phone up and film yourself meditating so you can see yourself falling asleep. Because we're interested in how does this happen? We're not about entering into judgment. To think I'm lazy or I'm stupid or I don't care doesn't take you anywhere. You observe, oh, the body becomes heavy, so my breath is becoming very shallow. Maybe before I meditate, I need to do some exercises, some basic yoga breathing or some light kumbhaka or purification breath, and many, many methods you can use. That is to say, deal with the imbalance outside of the sitting meditation practice. The practice is for relaxation, openness, and relaxing into the state of the mirror. So when he's saying here, so stay, what he says, so stay alert in the presence of awareness. This is your life. You are alive. You can see, you can hear, you can touch, have sensation. When you are dead, you won't be able to do that. When you are asleep, you're not doing that. So you don't have so many opportunities to be here with this. So you're here. And I'm not here. This is fascinating. I am not present. This is why we have this term, hlundrup, which means arising easily or instantly. And in the last 20 years or so, many people start to translate it as instant presence, because it's not as if something is arising for me, but rather I am arising with this. It is the instant presence of the unbroken field, the undivided, non-dual field. And what do I see? I see the clarity. Why would I not be with clarity? So something is pulling away from clarity. This can have all sorts of flavors. I don't want to, I can't be bothered. It could be largely physiological. So the basic encouragement is whatever comes, comes. If you feel like crying, you can just sit and cry. You're present with crying. Many people get the backache. You can sit with pain, you can sit with all the flavors of the world. The, the mirror shows everything. The ego is selective. So, from the ego point of view, I get sleepy. I don't want to be sleepy. From the point of view of awareness, you're just aware of being very sleepy. What is your object of meditation? Whatever occurs. Now, if you have a frame of reference that says the best meditation is bright and shiny and clear, then I need to make my mind bright. This is something we don't do. We have to let the tiredness or the distraction or the boredom or the confusion or the preoccupation come and go. The ego has no self-content and so is always filling itself with what is in the environment. I am tired, I am thirsty, I am happy. So again and again, we just sit and whatever happens will happen. But you might feel, oh, but I'm not making any progress. Well, this is a path without progress. It is called Dzogchen Chempo, the great completion. What you need is already here. But my meditation is terrible. How do you know this? This is what I experience. Who is the experiencer? Who is this happening for? Me. Me sounds opaque. Let's bring some clarity into I, me, myself. Stay present as this thought, I can't meditate, arises. It arrives almost with a certificate of truth because we are used to believing things like this. But we want awareness, not belief. So belief is quick, but it doesn't last very long. It arises and vanishes. Awareness doesn't vary. So when you start to feed yourself a conclusion about how you are or what you are, don't do anything. Just sit. You don't have to pick it up. You don't have to push it away. The thought has gone. The conclusion has vanished. The mind is self-liberating. So this is difficult because it's very subtle and we are rather crude. I mean, it's not actually difficult. It's difficult for people who are crude. We want to do something because the ego manufactures its identity and expresses itself through activity. But awareness doesn't do anything. It's like when you read in the text that when Buddha Shakyamuni was born in this family in North India, in the tantric version of this, he remained in this pure realm in the Potala and manifested an illusory body to demonstrate the 12 acts of a Buddha's life. Buddha's not doing all these things. Buddha's quite happy in the Potala pure land. We don't understand this very easily because if we want something done, we have to do it. But the Buddha sends out these emanations, these illusory forms, without moving from awareness. So this is the issue for us, to maintain relaxed open awareness and to allow movement to move. The one who interferes with the patterns of movement is the ego self. We are addicted to involvement. So sitting and not being involved is quite disturbing for many people. I could improve this. I could make it better. I could make it different. So in that moment, we have to recognize, oh, this is a judgment on the basis of subject, verb, and object. Subject, verb, and object are movement. Relax in the out breath, and here we are. So now we have a break for 55 minutes back at 2 o'clock English time. Have a good break. Bye for now. Okay? No? Uh-oh. Aha. Caramba. Ah, bravo. Bravo. Okay. So just before we go on with the text, I'd like to say something about how to study, because we'll go through the text now and you get some recording of the commentary and so on. But if you are like me, then you need to spend a lot of time with the text before you can start to have it ripen inside you. So for me, when I was learning, I was, of course, copying it out in Tibetan and then going the word meaning and many questions to Rinpoche. And I have made at least 8 versions of the translation. So my sense, and this is just for me, is it's very good to copy the text out, copying it by hand. And then as you go through it, many of the words maybe seem strange or not quite right. And on the basis of that, you can formulate questions and discuss it in the support groups. And you can send in questions to the question and answer sessions we have. The Tibetans have many examples about the importance of metabolizing the Dharma, bringing it into the marrow of your bones. You can take a Dharma as a kind of patch for a hole in your coat. You sew it onto the outside, but it never really becomes part of the coat. If we have the Dharma as our way of living, then many problems dissolve by themselves. Okay, so we continue with the text. Abiding in that state, the intrinsic actuality of your own awareness is empty clarity free of substance. So, how your awareness is in itself, just naturally without being made or developed in any way, is that it's empty clarity free of substance. Again, this is like the mirror. The mirror is empty, it doesn't have any content of its own, and it's free of substance. You can't find anything inside it, and yet it's ceaselessly offering clarity. The mirror is neither doing nor not doing. It is a space within which spontaneous expression occurs. The clarity of the mirror is what allows the reflection to show, but the clarity is not doing something. It is a non-active enabling factor, if you like. And for us, this is important because we are used to the idea of agency, of somebody doing something, the doer of the deed. But here, no one is doing anything. Each of us, we are the done. We're not the doer, we're not the source or the maker. Rather, we find ourselves in formation. We are become aware of how we are manifesting just a little after the manifesting occurs. So, because we often recognize how we are afterwards, we enter into a judgment. Was it good or bad? Because this time gap or time lapse allows a separation between the knower and the known. But the intrinsic actuality of your own awareness is intuitive, spontaneous, and free of the separation of knower and known. Now, you can't experience this if you are suspicious. You have to trust. Just as the Dalai Lama is always saying, you should, if you are looking for a teacher, a tantric or Dzogchen teacher, you should look carefully for 12 years before deciding. You should do all the kind of checking out and asking questions and asking other people. But then when you decide that they are a good teacher for you, you have to drop your doubts and hesitations. So this is the same with this practice. You should study and really read the text and allow questions to arise until you have at least an intellectual clarity. And then for the practice, you have to let go. You have to trust. This is how I will practice. Because if you keep examining what you are doing, you will simply bring thoughts into that which can't be thought about. And so your own desire for clarity will increase the opacity. Because intellectual clarity is dependent on causes and conditions, but the intrinsic clarity of the mind is not. So when he's saying remain bright, fresh, relaxed, open, this is an encouragement to find yourself here and now, so that everything is directly emerging with your presence. This prevents the bifurcation into subject and object. And this is itself the great completion or the great perfection. Integrity or non-splitting or non-division is there from the beginning. Splitting and diversification arises from the activity of trying to work out what things are by naming them. So he says, without grasping, it is free. It is here our own awareness. Without grasping, our awareness is free. So as some of us have looked many times before, if you go to grasp something, on the one hand, it looks like a powerful activity to be able to carry forward. I am grasping the pen, but the pen is imprisoning my hand. So if you can apply that emotionally as well, when you grasp at someone as a partner or children or an occupation or a state of health, you find that you lose some of your freedom. It's not that you have to renounce everything. You can enjoy without grasping. Enjoyment arises from being present in the moment of the revealing of the taste of the coffee or the ice cream. You can't hang on to the taste of the ice cream. It's not something to hold on to. It is a revelation which requires you to be there. So it's not that you have to have this bland, neutral life. Life can be rich and multidimensional with many flavors, but they arise and pass. So when, as Namkhai Norbu would say, when we're working with circumstances, because the circumstances are rising and passing like a wave in the ocean, we work with it by being with it at this moment, in this place. So then he says, without craving, it is happy. Craving arises when you want something that is not there. Craving is a feeling tone, a hunger which displaces you from here and now. If only I had that, life would be better. So as soon as you take up that position, you're confirming to yourself that you're not having the full happiness now. The happy is an interesting term because it's a translation of dewa, which sometimes is translated as bliss. But it's not so much about an intense happiness, because that will vanish for sure. It's more like a contentment. It is the happiness which is the absence of suffering. If you like, it's the happiness which is the middle way between suffering and joy or bliss. And what's important about it is that it has the feeling of, I'm not bothered. If this continues, fine. If it doesn't continue, fine. So the quality of this contentment belongs to awareness, to the mirror. It's not generated by the pattern of the reflection that arises. Without thought, it is completely authentic. When we think about things, we either put them into question or we add our own comments. completely authentic indicates it's yene, it's from the beginning, just like this. And from the beginning, in English, can indicate something from long, long ago. But we have to remember that all phenomena are unborn. So from the very beginning means from now, but completely present in this now. This is fresh. It has not been before. It will not be again. This is it. That's all we can say. This is it. That is what is completely authentic. So when we hear the great completion, the great perfection, this is it. It's authentically itself as it is revealed without having a self or being a self. Without inside or outside, it is direct. So very often the instruction for the practice is don't hold the world out there and don't hold your mind inside. When you do that, it is as if the kind of knowledge you can have of yourself and the kind of knowledge you have of other people or the world are of different orders. That is to say, the sensations in my body are directly available to me, but the sensations in your body are not. When you examine in this way, you become concerned with the quality of the content of the experience. But when we do the white R Guru Yoga and we're just sitting, if you find yourself released from the echo chamber of thought, noises arise outside, sensation arises, and we see, oh, everything which occurs is a momentary revelation. So what I call outside of me, what I call inside me, an airplane, a dog, an itch on my shoulder, these are all arising and passing. What we take to be their content or their meaning or value tends to be the additional qualities they take on when we approach them as our ego self. So if you stay with the directness of awareness, you find that it is an equal host to any kind of appearance or phenomena. So awareness or Rigpa, when we open to it, also gives us access to the Dharma Dhatu. The Dharma Dhatu is the space of dharmas. There's space for everything. There's nothing outside the Dharma Dhatu. It is emptiness as hospitality. So when the emptiness of the mind manifests as this instant presence, we are aware of everything because this is it. Oh, but where is Africa? No, Africa is here. As soon as you ask the question, Africa arises. Amazing. This is much quicker than telephoning for a pizza to be delivered. You say Africa, we have Africa. Because Africa is now arising in the mind. Oh, but it's not the real Africa. Well, if you can travel around Africa without naming Africa, then you're already a Buddha. Your Africa will be Africa plus name, plus liking, not liking, it's too hot or the water's not good. It's a long, hard journey for the ego to visit Africa. But awareness has Africa in an instant. Then he says, awareness is not touched by any fault or good quality whatsoever. So again, it's like the mirror. We look at this many times. The mirror is not improved by a beautiful reflection or made ugly by a negative or difficult reflection. But if you come into a room and you look up the mirror and it reflects some flowers outside in the garden, you say, ah, it's so beautiful. What is beautiful? The reflection has no substance. And the quality you attribute to the reflection doesn't touch the mirror. When you meet someone and you have a sense of how they are, who they are, unless you are really secure in your practice, you're not going to see this is the display of the Dharmakaya. You see, this is John and he likes football and he eats too much and so on. I know who John is. As if the fact of liking football was some essential, eternal truth defining Johnness. But the essence of John is the potential that will manifest in different lives, in different shapes, animal shape, God shape, woman shape. So for most of us, we have to struggle with this. When you meet John or Mary, it seems obvious. This is a person, they are male or female, they are attractive or not attractive. John is your mind. What you like or what you don't like has to do with your mind. But we don't believe this. We think, no, it's John. As if your conceptualization of John was an accurate perception of the inherent truth of Johnness. So in Buddhism, this is called obscuration or opacity or mental dullness. Before the break, we were talking about clarity. This is the very opposite of clarity. So if we want to understand the mind, we have to be very attentive to the perverse joy of being the namer of the world. In the Bible, in Genesis, this is the pleasure and the privilege of God to name everything. But what we can see through the meditation is that this is the function of the ego. Things are what they say, what I say they are. People are how I describe them. I speak the truth. When we have some capacity for social adaptation, we are willing to say, oh, that's just my opinion. But that's probably just us being polite. It's such a lot of trouble to try to sort out the stupidity of other people. So although we secretly know the truth, we don't say it too much. So this is important to see, because this is how this habit of identification with ego formation can tip you out of the openness of awareness. So then he says, awareness is not obscured by any good or bad actions whatsoever. Say you do something you're not proud of. You lie about having done something which you didn't actually do. This might bring up some feeling of guilt for your ego self. It will certainly require the ego self to remember what you said so that you can continue to say the same false thing. So when you have the thought, oh, I have to remember that I said that was finished. I have to remember. That is a thought. The thought has no light of its own. It is the light of awareness, which, like the sun shining out in the sky, illuminates all our experience. So when you know that you told a lie, your awareness is the illuminator of that knowing. So if you see that, then instead of blaming yourself and thinking you should be better, catch, oh, it's open. The limitation or the finite is in the infinite. So no matter how small and useless you think you are, this is just a pattern of energy within the openness of the mind. And he says, awareness is not bound and it's not freed. This is very important, because what is the path to liberation? If the basis of your life, the real ground of everything that happens for you is your own awareness, and it's not bound, how are you going to free it? Oh, we go around the same territory again and again. The pattern of reflection is not the same as the mirror. There's a term that's often used in this context, Ye Sanje, means Buddha from the very beginning. Never bound, never freed, just Buddha. So this is awareness. So he says it's naked, quiet, without stain, unobscured. So it's not covered in anything. And it doesn't take any stain or coloration into it. It's unmarked and it's quiet. This quietness is being peaceful means it's not announcing itself. The ego is always announcing itself because it has to define itself. We human beings are stuck with these two main possibilities. Either I define myself or you define me. For most of us, we prefer to define ourselves. If you're living in a dictatorship, you find that the state can define people's behavior in a way that they don't agree with. So in Myanmar, the former Burma, the protesters are called terrorists and by the government. And if the protesters are arrested and taken to court, the court doesn't accept that they are freedom fighters. They say, no, you are a terrorist, you go to prison. So that's how life is in many dictatorial countries. So people want to find their voice. They want to be entitled to protest, to speak out. But this is not what awareness does. This is ego activity. And awareness is unobscured. So for meditators, this is very important to be clear about. I want to find my mind. Well, I don't need to find my hand. I might need to find my glasses because my hand is with me, it's joined on, and my glasses are not. Even if my hand is dirty, it's not obscured because I feel it from the inside. Okay, so the mind is unobscured. So why am I approaching looking for my mind as if it was somewhere else? In fact, I am hiding my mind by looking for it. I am obscuring it by trying to pull it into the light. So when we do this, the Guru Yoga of the white R, we relax into the always already present awareness, which is not covered. Awareness is not made or altered by anyone. It's not made by any God. It's not made by karma. It's not made by the ripening of the results of previous activity. And it's not altered by anyone. If you go to see a Lama and you get initiations and blessings and they put their hand on your head, it doesn't change your awareness. Awareness is unchanging. So now we have another paragraph now saying quite similar things. And the reason they're being repeated is, firstly, it's difficult for us to accept that this is the truth. It's not being repeated as a dogma that you have to believe. Whether you believe this or not is irrelevant, because, which he just said, your mind, this awareness is not made or altered by anyone. If you say Dzogchen is wonderful or Dzogchen is rubbish, it doesn't make any difference. Dzogchen is, without being anything. So how do we find this? If we read these words and study them and bring them close to us, they are kind of very subtle rebalancing. So if you were in a jacuzzi that had some bubble stuff coming up from the bottom, the water was bubbling up, you wouldn't need to be kind of swimming to keep yourself afloat. It's just quite light and supportive. In the same way, when you have these Dharma ideas moving in your mind, when you're doing the actual meditation practice, you don't want to be thinking about what he's describing, but you want these ideas to be subtly present, like a kind of gentle massage that keeps you just open and at ease. So then he says, when a clear, direct actualization of this primordial, unartificial, effortless truth arises, then for whatever arises from that state, be it bliss, clarity, an absence of thought, or sinking and excitement with good or bad thoughts, or thoughts of the afflictions, or the grasping thoughts that arise with the appearance and sounds that arise due to the objects of the six senses, take whatever arises as the object of meditation. So he's saying the clarity that comes from seeing the truth of awareness, that it is unborn and unchanging, this is sweet, so settle into it. You got the main thing. You got nothing because there's nothing to get. But the nothing that you got is the most wonderful nothing because it's the ground of everything. So whatever occurs, remain relaxed and open with it. And the key word there is with. Not ahead of it, not behind it, not on top of it, not underneath it. So this would be like some experienced musicians who are used to playing together, and maybe four musicians, and somehow they feel time at the same time. Time is the basis of the revelation of their music. Time is not something that they have or they need to think about. They are in time, as time, with time. And so if they are improvising, they don't need to structure it through conceptualization. It is direct and immediate. So he's saying, whatever arises from that state, you look for the mind, find that the mind is empty. The mind is empty. You can't find any walls to it, any front or back. It has no border or boundary. It's infinite. Everything is instantly with it. There is no other source. So that's why he's saying whatever arises from this. It's not exactly from. From gives the sense that maybe there's some secret factory inside that's pumping it up. The reflection is in the mirror. The clarity of the mirror supports the arising of the reflection. You could say the reflection comes from the mirror. It comes out of the mirror's capacity to reflect, but it's not coming from there to here. So it's the same when we're sitting in a practice and you hear a car outside in the road, and then if you have a cat, maybe the cat starts to walk over you. Well, where is this coming from? The mind. The cat is your mind. The noise of the car is your mind. So you have to look again and again to see this. How can my cat be my mind? Well, tell me about your cat. What age is it? Does it like climbing? Okay, so you're telling me stories about the cat. If the cat could speak, would it agree? The cat is not caught by your thoughts about the cat. The cat's revelation as one paw comes onto your leg where you're sitting is just this feeling of the paw on your leg. You're sitting down cross-legged, so your muscles are in a particular way. This cat paw at this moment on your leg, on this time, is this. So that's what it means. It arises from this state. Your presence is this. And then whether it's things you see outside or whether it's pleasurable or an empty mind with no thoughts in it, good, bad, right, wrong, however it is, just stay present with that without accepting or rejecting, inhibiting or encouraging in any way. Stay clear and relaxed, whatever appearances or thoughts arise. It means don't take up any position. To take a position is to limit yourself because it brings with it a particular orientation. Whatever is occurring for you is the potential of your mind. So don't enter into subject-object dualism. You just stay clear and relaxed. By this, thoughts need not be rejected. You don't have to quieten your mind. Mind itself is not mere emptiness, for its innate clarity arises naturally as the Dharmakaya intrinsic mode. The Dharmakaya is the brightness of Rigpa awareness, inseparable from emptiness. And what's important here is the Dharmakaya, the mind of the Buddha, is awareness. It's not the content of the Buddha's mind. The Dharmakaya is not the product of lots of good, kind thoughts. It's not made. It is the revelation of the intrinsic clarity of being present. So you find the emptiness of your mind when you stop grasping at transient appearance, and you're really clear, oh, yes, the mind is empty, but that emptiness is inseparable from the display, which is ceaseless. So he says, at all times, whether eating, sleeping, moving, or sitting, you must unwaveringly maintain the state of non-meditation. Non-meditation means not having any prefigured notion of what meditation would be. So this is very, very important. If you are present with eating when you're eating, walking when you're walking, which is not the same as Theravadan mindfulness of walking when you're walking, because you're not being mindful of it, which would mean I am attentive to what I am doing. Eating is like a wave of the sea arising and passing as is sleeping or moving. Like the reflection arising in the mirror, you put your spoon into the bowl of soup and the eating flows as an activity. The eater and the act of eating and what is eaten are not separated. If you find that you lose recollection of your inherent clarity, then, as explained above, you will be obscured by ignorance. So this is not so sweet. Traditional example is that in Dzogchen, you're like a snake in a bamboo tube. You can only go up or down. So either you are present with how it is, or you find yourself imagining how it is, which is always how it is not. No matter, it says, no matter how much virtue of your compounded body, your flesh and blood body and voice you perform, it does not pass beyond co-emergent ignorance. So then he asks, now, why is this the case? So if you devote your life to being virtuous and doing good things and helping people and setting up monasteries and hospitals and so on, you are maintaining the clarity of your agency. So then he says, the essence of ignorance is wavering, forgetfulness, obscuration, dullness, unconsciousness, non-recollection, carelessness, and laziness. Murky, dark, unclear, don't know what I'm doing. But if you recall from last time, co-emergent ignorance is in this system the first level of ignorance, which the first dark, the first obscuration. Ignorance is next to clarity. Virtue and a highly polished identity is further away from clarity than ignorance. I am a good person. I try my best to help other people. I have done this project. I collected so much money and I built a stupa. To build the stupa, we had to negotiate with the local government and with people in the community who didn't want the stupa. But we were determined to do something virtuous. On one level, this sounds good, but on another level, it's not. The famous story is when Bodhidharma, the Indian Buddhist yogi who took the beginning of Chan Dharma to China, very interesting man. When he was presented to the emperor told him about the many monks he fed every day and the nunneries he had built and the schools and the stupas. And he asked Bodhidharma, how much merit do you think I have accumulated? And Bodhidharma says, none. It was very painful, no doubt, for the emperor, but also potentially very helpful if he could hear. Because there is general dharma, which is about being a good person and not causing too much trouble, and meditators dharma. And meditators dharma means we go into the forest, into the jungle. We sit with the wavering, forgetfulness, obscuration, dullness, unconsciousness, non-recollection, carelessness, laziness. These are the qualities of meditators. I hope you all recognize yourself in this description, because we get lost, we get confused, but the light is hidden in the dark. So he says, the essence of awareness is self-awareness of one's own falseness. So if you see directly how you get lost, that you believe things which are not true, that you deceive yourself, then by releasing that intoxication with the need to create a false identity, there is a space. And that is the space in which you can recognize the clarity and emptiness. Okay, let's take a break here until 1:45, about 25 minutes. Good. See you soon. Okay? No? Oh. Yeah? Okay. So there's never really enough time for all of this because it can get much bigger. Okay, so just return to this last bit. The essence of awareness is self-awareness of one's own falseness. And this is, it's not about seeing something which has to be removed, like purifying errors. There's not something to be removed. Our own falseness is our own belief in the reality of phenomena. It is the very activity of belief. So Sia Lama, who taught me this text, he often said of himself that he was liar number one, cheater number one. And he said of himself, I don't trust anyone, and number one, I don't trust myself. And there's a lot of profound teaching in these expressions. Our desire to be good people and have people like us. But we know that the Dharma says there is no truly existing person. The Theravadan teachings talk of the five aggregates, the five skandhas, which create the illusion of the person. In the Mahayana teachings, they stress the emptiness of human beings and all dharmas. We are living in this theater of illusion. It is as if we are walking and talking and supporting friends and being careful of enemies and so on. But this is false activity. There is no end to the fabrication of identity. In Tibetan, you have this word, the choma, which means fabrication or artificial construction, a contrivance and artificiality. And this is very, very tempting. In life, we have many roles as the children of our parents, children in school, adult relationships, and so on. We act in the manner of. We learn how to be socially appropriate. This is the theater of samsara. This is pretense. The teaching says your true essence, how you actually are, is ungraspable emptiness. an emptiness which ceaselessly displays an infinite field of possibilities. This field is emerging as an ever-shifting panoply of possibilities. So the self-knowledge that we have of who we are and who we can convince other people that we are is in fact a lie. So often in the text it says, may our problems be the path. Not may we have a path free of problems, but may problems be the path, because when we engage with our problems, we are disturbed. We don't understand what has happened to us. Our life has not turned out the way we thought it would. So how could this happen to me? Because I am not who I think I am. So either we then try to get back to being the one who we think we are, or we look and see, oh, I am like this for a while, and then it will change. I am an unfolding process, and I don't know. Not to know is the beginning of wisdom. If you know you're stupid, then you can start to wake up. But if you think you're a smart cookie and you've got your life sorted and you know what you're going to do, then it's very difficult to wake up. We have to remember Prince Siddhartha was able to become enlightened because he was more than a little crazy. He was living in a very nice house, some people say a palace, plenty of food, entertainment, sex, and so on. But he ran away. He left it to wander about and almost starve to death. He saw this palace is a prison. It's a prison of desire. In fact, the story goes that his father especially created it as a prison of desire because he didn't want his son to become a holy man. So when Siddhartha saw that this luxurious, pampered life was in fact a prison, everything is turned upside down. This pleasure is in fact pain. And when he left the palace, the pain of wandering without food and doing many aesthetic practices was in fact a pleasure, because it was taking him in the direction he wanted to go in. He was showing directly the danger of being trapped in false identity. We have a rare opportunity to also awaken to this. In the other realms of samsara, the hells, animals, gods, and so on, the intensity of life is such that there is little chance of reflection. Even those who have a human body and education don't necessarily have introduction to Dharma or give for themselves the time to change their life. For us, enjoying our lives, chatting with friends, when the lockdown is finished, going to nice restaurants and so on, this is life. I feel really alive and awake when we're meeting socially and having an interesting conversation. But in fact, I have fallen asleep into the semiotic web. In our interesting conversation, you say something, I say something, we build up pictures of ideas. I must go and read that book you were talking about. It sounds so good. This is the meaning of mental dullness. That sounds so strange because actually I'm alive when I read these books. But this is like a demon's theater, caught up in exchanging ideas as if that was the path to freedom. Then Sial Lama often said to me, you cannot think your way out of samsara. So that is why this teaching is very important, that we see how we cheat ourselves. To be cheated doesn't mean that we are bad. It means that we have built up a lot of habits of relying on ideas and concepts to provide the meaning of existence, so that our experience tends to be mediated through the ideas that we use to formulate our interpretations. So he says, awareness is naked, friendless, single, alone, with a presence that transcends conceptualization. So could be that you have a very social life. You might be a family person with children and people around you all the time. You don't need to change any of that because the status of these people and your experience of them is the movement of the mind. But your awareness itself is naked. It means that all the thoughts and memories and plans that you wrap around your sense of self, they don't touch awareness. And this awareness is friendless. Even if you live with someone and you've lived with them for 30 years and they are your best friend, they know you so well, but they don't know your awareness. They know your ego structures, your patterns of manifestation. Awareness is friendless because it is not something that you can know or that they can know. You cannot know about it because it is you. You cannot see your own eye directly because you see through it, living through the presence of your awareness. And it is single and alone. Single means it doesn't mean just one. It means single in the sense of singular. It is precisely as it is and beyond comparing and contrasting. And it is alone, not lonely, but it is alone because it is infinite. When you go, if you're happily in the country and you can go for a walk and you see the hill in the distance, there is so much, and it's with your awareness. You go out at night and you see the moon and the stars. This is the light of awareness. There is nothing other than awareness, nothing outside of it. It is nothing at all like your ego self. But it is the basis of your existence, and your ego self is not the basis of your existence. So he says, this awareness has a presence which transcends conceptualization. You can't catch it with a thought. Now, this is where we have to watch our own lying, cheating falseness, because the ego gets lonely. The ego wants friends and imagine friends, and it creates all kinds of possibilities in the future and interpretations of what's happening now. And this kind of structure is comforting to our ego. I can confirm that I am like this, but awareness is not like anything. So the more you see this, it's not that you have to get rid of the ego or destroy the ego. It's like sometimes in Germany, we have a little party at the end of a retreat. And I like to watch the people dancing. And each person dances in their own unique way. But how they dance is not the truth of them. They are revealing an aspect of their manifestation that is a showing of some of the potential of their expression. So it has particular shape, it has particular ways of operating, but it is on the basis of watching them dancing, you cannot know who they really are. So in the same way, the ego is expressive. In our ego selves, we are expressing patterns and ways of moving and changing and relating. It's how we show. It's not how we show ourselves, because we don't have a self to show, or rather, the only self that we have is the self that we show. There's not another one hidden inside. So it's not that we have to get rid of this ego self, but simply to recognize that if I over-identify with the patterns of manifestation, I cheat myself, and that is my falseness. So he says, so stay just exactly in awareness without doing anything else. So the description of how manifestation occurs is that it is effortless, instant. This is set in opposition to construction. Just as we have the paths of practice called lamrim, stage by stage, and the practice is described as chikchar, as sudden or instant. To stay with awareness is to not engage in constructive activity. Let it come as it comes, because how it comes will not define you. If you were to allow your energy pattern in your body, you might want to sleep a lot, and you might always be late for meetings, and other people might find it annoying. All you can say is, yes, I am lazy, late, and annoying. And these three qualities do not define me. I am indefinable, undefinable. So say whatever you like. This is the key of freedom. This is why pride is very dangerous for meditators. People think you are a holy person, that you should be on a special throne or have a big monastery. These fake qualities can be very dangerous. If everybody agrees you're good, you have a problem, because then only you know how bad you are. So then this little section, the activity. Oh, it says, at all times and in all situations, do not allow awareness to go under the power of good or bad conditions. Now, again, there's some grammatical problem here, because awareness cannot go under the power of good or bad conditions. The problem is, if bad conditions arise, and the clarity that the ego formation is energy expression, not essence, is lost, then you can feel, oh, I fucked up, this is not good, what's gone wrong? Things being good or bad are always judgments, interpretations, which arise according to criteria. And there are no criteria that everybody agrees about. So if you remain open in awareness without blocking your egoic reactivity, then you will have your, then the familiar reactions that you have to events can be there, but they're not the truth. It's an energetic response. If you became so controlled that there was no reaction at all, you would almost have to be dead. As Chogyam Trungpa said, if Buddhas had no individuality, then every hospital would have a special back ward for Buddhas where they would lie in bed all day and not do anything. The mirror shows reflections, and the reflections show the clarity of the mirror, but the reflection doesn't define the mirror. So this is the beginning of freedom. When live the way you live, manifest spontaneously according to circumstances. And someone says, James, you talk too much. Okay, what are we going to do? Cut out. You don't like it? That's you. I cannot be defined by you. If I cannot find my own mind to define it, and I'm living with my mind, then on what basis are you going to be the one who can define my true nature? The mind is ungraspable. This is our intrinsic freedom. We know in the world that so many people's situations are limited by prejudice about color and gender and so on, because people believe that they know that if you have this kind of sexual interest, you are a bad person. There is no truth to that. It's just an opinion. It's just a string of words and thoughts. But if that person has power, they can get you put in prison or beaten up or raped or whatever. So we have to know that awareness is ungraspable. And then you will feel free. No one can catch you, and you can't catch yourself. You, what you take yourself to be, is the flowering of your awareness. But your awareness itself is never seen. So he says, on the outside, do not engage in worldly activities as much as possible. Maybe you need to earn money and rent is expensive and so on. The key thing would be the middle way. If you take your work too seriously, you become driven and anxious. If you don't take it at all seriously, you become lazy and other people don't like it and you lose your job. So you go to work in the manner of a dream, the middle way. Then he says, do not do any Dharma practice whatsoever. Means don't recite mantras. Don't say prayers. A prayer or a mantra is an activity. Activities are patternings of energy directed towards an outcome. What do you want to happen? I want to wake up to how I am. So stay with yourself. How will I see myself? By moving or by standing still? If you ask your friend to take a photograph of you and you want it because it's important, and you start jumping up and down and twirling around, they say, just stand still. The same, if you want to awaken to your own awareness, just sit still. Don't clean the offering bowls. Don't do prostrations. Don't say prayers. This is not a critical comment. It doesn't mean these activities are bad. They just won't help with what you're trying to do, which is not become completely familiar with the one true practice of being awake to your own awareness as the essence of all the Buddhas of the three times. Everything is arising as movement in the mirror of awareness. Whether it's holy activity or worldly activity, generous activity or selfish activity, stay present as the mirror and allow the activity to arise without checking or changing. So then we have section 3, the result. There's with the completion of that practice of one's own awareness, it is present without effort or intellectual activity. If it was something you had to develop, you would lose your relation with it if you didn't keep developing. Professional skiers and singers and dancers have to keep practicing because they are practitioners of art. Art means artificial, and artificial means not intrinsic, but awareness is intrinsic. If you awaken to it, you don't need to keep practicing it. It is Dzogchen Chempo. It is complete in itself. It doesn't need effort to improve it or change it or shape it or polish it. So again and again and again, he's saying your awareness is not something you know. It's not something you will ever know. Just get out the fucking way of it. Saying, listen, ego, you're not so important. You're in the corps de ballet. You've got your nice shoes, you've got your little tutu, you can get your hair done, but you're not the prima ballerina. You are not. You're just in the choir. You're not the soloist. As you manifest in your body, you are a sentient being moving among other sentient beings. The real star of the show never appears on the stage because the real star of the show is the stage. It is the space of possibility. So this is very important. Thus, the three modes of awareness are realized in their own place, and one gains the result which is conventionally known as Buddhahood. So these three modes of awareness, he's just coming on to describe them in a moment, so I won't say much about that, but they are realized or awakened to in their own place. So we are concerned with revelation, not construction. And when you have the unveiling or the releasing from obscuration of the intrinsic purity of yourself, you gain the result which is conventionally known as Buddhahood. There are no Buddhas. Buddha is just the name. When you have the name Buddha, you can learn lots about the Buddhas and build up all kinds of images in your mind about how a Buddha should be. That's what he's emphasizing here by conventionally known as Buddhahood. Don't take this mental construct as being some kind of proof or validator of what is occurring. Because we are so addicted to the idea of getting somewhere and achieving something that you imagine I have to make myself enlightened. I have to gain enlightenment to get enlightenment. I have to get the result. But there is no one to get the result because the result is not other than you. Imagine I have to get the result of being me. I am me. But maybe I have some trauma or some psychological disturbance. I don't feel like me. I feel alienated. After some time, I come back into myself. Have I gained myself or achieved myself or realized myself? Have I gained myself? I am myself. I I seem to lose myself, but I didn't lose anything because here I am. So the primordial Buddha is always Buddha. It is as if this Buddha was lost, but is not lost. And so it's not gained. So although you may feel at the moment, you don't know that you are a Buddha, knowing it or not knowing it is not the issue. It is that you are the Buddha. And this will be obvious if you open to the actuality of how you are. So then he says, moreover, the openness of awareness is the unborn intrinsic mode. So awareness is just for each of us at this moment. The fact of all this is our awareness. In English, I can say, I am aware my neck is a bit stiff. But this, for our purposes, that's a confusing kind of vocabulary. I am conscious that there is some tension in my neck. There is something, tension in the neck, that I, the subject, am conscious of. Awareness is not like that. Awareness is the showing, the illumination. It is not a knowing, but a showing. So what does it show? All this. All this is awareness. It's not that awareness is back here looking at what is revealed by awareness. Awareness is free of the duality of subject and object. As Sia Lama used to say to me, sometimes it looks subject, sometimes it looks object. When it looks like the object, like you look out, now I can see the blue sky and the big clouds. All this is awareness. Sometimes it's divided that you have awareness and you have clarity. The clarity of awareness. I can say the size of my hand. So people have different hands which are different sizes. The size of my hand is a quality of my hand. But the clarity of awareness is not the quality of awareness. It's not that awareness sometimes has this quality and sometimes doesn't have it. Awareness is clarity. So again, we have to be aware. We have a tendency of identifying things, entities, and shaping them and patterning so that we know what they are. And what's being described here is non-duality, the undivided, the all at onceness. So this is the unborn Dharmakaya. The mind of the Buddha is awareness which is open for everything. Openness here means without prejudice, without any bias or tendency. The immediacy of awareness, that is to say, it's what it shows is the innate clarity of the enjoyment mode. It's called also in Sanskrit the Sambhogakaya. The innate clarity means it, without any effort, it shows its presence by the unveiling of how it is. So, for example, if you take a sip of wine, the wine is showing itself. There is the color that you see in the glass. You can swirl it in the glass and see how it develops legs or these patterns on the side of the glass. Then you have the aroma, the smell of it, and the taste. And each of these is a direct revelation. Anything you can say about the taste of wine is probably stupid, because it's obvious that words can't capture the taste of wine, because it's a subjective response. But it's this. And that's what it's meaning by the innate clarity of the enjoyment mode. So when I look outside, we had a big hailstone storm in London just now, and now the sky is blue. When the hailstones were coming down, I looked out and it was all gray, and now it's all blue. Oh, when I see the blue sky, I'm in another world. Then I think, oh, well, maybe I go for a walk. When it was gray sky, I didn't feel like a walk. So when you pay attention to how your life is, you find that it is this kind of direct showing moment by moment. Then the potential of awareness is the all-pervading apparitional mode, also called the Nirmanakaya. An apparition is like a magical form, something which appears and you can see it, but there is no substance to it. Just as my being in the world, in my body, there is an immediate response to circumstances. How I manifest, if I can stay open to the ground, to the unborn basis, is never determined. We don't know how we are going to manifest. If we avoid actual direct contact with our environment, we can stay inside the habitual formation of patterns of behavior when we get up, what we eat, how we dress, and so on. And we can become so habituated that we become deadened by this. So when the bodhisattvas were depicted in the early period, they were usually depicted with one leg out, not in Padmasana, because they are responsive. They respond. We don't know how they will respond, but they will respond. It will depend. And it won't depend on some kind of algorithm or template for analysis, but by presence, by the co-emergent presence, which allows an intuitive spontaneity. And that's why it's, excuse me, described as an apparition, because nobody is doing it. I remember looking at some videos of very experienced Aikido masters. And they would stand in the middle of the mats in the dojo. And at first, one person is running in to do something with them. And they go flying across the room. And it speeds up, and they have 5 people running in at once, then 10 people running in at once. And this old master is just moving around, and people are falling on the ground. Clearly, he doesn't know what he's doing. He's just doing. Of course, he's done a lot of training, but the training is not like programming a computer. Without reflection, without analysis, the body in its freedom is responding. So you can really see someone doing without doing. So this is the quality of the Nirmanakaya. It's not coming with a menu or a program. It is an availability. So then it says, in the intrinsic way, the three modes are inseparable as the single point of actuality. This is a whole string of technical terms. It means that without any construction, these three aspects of awareness are indivisible. The single point or the single ball is to represent both ungraspability and indefinability. If there is a ball of steel, like a ball bearing, you roll it around on your hand and it has no beginning or end. It's complete in itself. It offers no handle to hold it by or set one side against another. So this single ball or drop or tigli is the undividedness of our direct experience. So then he says, then indistinguishable from the intrinsic mode samantabhadra, which means the Dharmakaya samantabhadra, one's awareness goes directly to akanishta, where one definitely gains Buddhahood as the complete and perfect Samyak Sambuddha. The problem for this kind of text is that if we didn't have all his repetition, it could be said in 6 sentences. But when you look at general Buddhism with its hierarchies of Buddhas and different Buddha realms and many, many practices to be done, if they say, just do this and you get complete enlightenment, can we believe this? What about going up the 10 bodhisattva stages? And then the tantric stages beyond that? And the 4 levels of the Vidyadhara? There are endless numbers of categories of higher and lower. But he's saying, if you relax into this intrinsic, that which you already have, that which is already informing and manifesting as everything about you, you will be inseparable from the enlightened mind of Samantabhadra, the primordial Buddha, and one's awareness will go directly to Akanishta, which means the non-higher realm, the highest of all possible realms, where one definitely gains Buddhahood as a complete and perfect, complete Buddha. So this last bit is kind of the public relations department. So this little country church will bring you as close to God as going to some Baroque or Rococo fantasy in Vienna. So he's saying you can trust this. And the main reason you can trust it is that it's not going to be made by you. When you realize your own falseness, maybe liar number 2, then you think, I have a tendency to make a mess of things. So it's just as well I don't have to make myself a Buddha. So if I just sit still and don't mess about and don't interfere, all problems will be self-liberating and the integrity of the 3 kayas will manifest automatically. So he says, so please keep this in mind. And so tomorrow we will finish this last part on this 3 modes or the 3 aspects of the Buddha. And then the following weekend in April, we'll do the final bit of the text. But as I suggested earlier, if you can spend time with the text, writing it out by hand, doing the practice whenever you can, and observing how your busy mind functions, then you start to see that less is more. You are a Buddha pretending to be a human being. If you want to properly wake up to being a Buddha, you simply have to stop pretending to be a human being. Good. Well, thank you very much to the translators today and the organizers. And we meet tomorrow morning, if you like, at 10 o'clock to continue this part of the text.
Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Grazie.
you, James.
Thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
See you tomorrow, everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, James.
Tomorrow.
Thank you.
Bye guys.
Thank
Take
you so
care.
much. Bye.
Obrigado.
Bye. So maybe we can just begin by doing the Guru Yoga of the White R. Okay. So when we do this practice, we want to not have any sharp boundary between sitting and then being more open to the world. Whatever is occurring is revealed to us in two ways. The first is directly, and the second is according to our interpretation, which is how I take it. We take according to our sense of self. And yesterday we looked how that can only operate if there is something to take. So when we begin the practice, we do the 3R and we release our grasping, attachment, involvement. And the more we can relax and release, there is just the movement of experience. There is, I think, at the beginning, for most people, a difficult transition period. because you're letting go of your developed mechanism for meaning making, for making sense of what is occurring, which is your reliance on concepts. When thoughts and concepts, memories, and so on arise in the mind, instead of linking them together as interpretive patterns, we just let them go by. So what is occurring then is, well, what? We have to stay with that until it reveals itself. If we move towards it in an active way, it will resemble the field of interpretation that we are familiar with. And if we just leave it, these layers of projected interpretation gradually leach out of it until it becomes more and more transparent. So this is what the texts are calling clarity. And it takes some time to trust that there is an intelligence to clarity that allows life to continue as it does. And we start to see that we are part of the revelation, that this is a non-dual revelation in which every part is arising together. But if we get confused or anxious, or it all seems a bit too vague, then the danger is we reach out to hold on to something, and then we're back in the situation of subject and object, and inventing the world according to our own physical, mental capacity, education, and so on. And so from yesterday, Chetsangpa Lama was making very clear that this awareness, the purity of the mind, doesn't need our help. That what we think from our egocentric point of view is helping is actually increasing the problematic. So this is a bit of an insult to our ego. This is an unequal relationship. We need the Buddha, but the Buddha doesn't need us. The Buddha can help us, but there's nothing much we can do to help the Buddha. But if we see the point of this, then it shows that receptivity is the path, that to open and receive is our mode of participation. But if instead of listening, we keep speaking, we won't hear the music of the world. And then we won't find ourselves coming into an automatic alignment with that music. When the texts are talking about effortless, and from the very beginning, it's always indicating we are not trying to do anything. As human beings, our intentionality is governed by our own condition. According to the descriptions of the process of generating karma, on the basis of a dualistic mode of experience, subject and object. When we experience ourselves as a subject, we develop intentions. The intention can be towards an outer object or to ourselves as an object. So we decide we want to do something. If you have a garden at this time of the year, there are lots of tasks to be done to prepare the way for spring. And after the winter, you might decide that you also have to do something about your body and get more healthy. So the subject gains a sense of identity, purpose, value by orienting towards an object with a clear intention. This is not at all what is indicated by effortless. Effortless means no intention. You can't plan to apply yourself to something. So yesterday he was saying the object of meditation, or the focus of meditation, is whatever occurs. A thought comes, then some feeling, there's a noise from outside. Many things are occurring, and they're gone. By the time you work out what you want to do with them, the actual presentation has vanished. And so if you look clearly, you will see that your intention is always formulated towards the idea of something, not about the actual. So when we simply relax and allow whatever is occurring to occur, we are receiving, and we, in our receptivity, we are displaying, and that's all. And as if in the manner of a dream, new patterns are occurring, links are occurring, without the need for ego's additional organization or activity. We use the word karma, but essentially it means activity. And maybe we should stop saying karma, because it creates a sense there is it's something of a different order. In fact, it's just ordinary activity. What we tend to ignore is that our ordinary activity is both arising from patterns of perception, interpretation, formulation, and in its mobilization, it is reinforcing these patterns. And that leads to a certain orientation in oneself. For example, you might grow up in a house where as soon as you have had a drink, you should take your cup and wash it. Or you can just leave them on the table and later on tidy up. There are many kinds of organizations of body, voice, and mind in these different kinds of permission or encouragement. And as we know, some children align with the parents' patterns of behavior, at least until they are teenagers, until they start to want to do the opposite. And in that way, they're formulating their behavior not in terms of a profound internal desire, but as an effort to separate them from the parents. Well, we're all familiar with that. Then we can see how identity, the profile that we seem to have of ourselves, is so important for governing our selection of possibilities from the world and organizing our behavior towards them. So this is an encouragement to see whether the patterns of behavior that you habitually enact are really necessary or not. Although when yesterday towards the end, we were seeing the description that everything is fine as it is, because it is what it is or how it is. But nonetheless, these patternings of mobilization have an energetic component to them, and they can generate tensions inside our embodied being, so that there is a habitual narrowing of our sense of the options available. And so when the texts are talking about adopting and rejecting, so in the general Buddhist text, they say you should adopt virtue and reject unhelpful, unvirtuous activity. And in the higher tantras and in Dzogchen, it says, be free of adopting and rejecting. Now, that is easy to say and difficult to do, because the patterns arise in us, as us. And of course, the real resolution is to see it as the energy of the ground. And on that level, it's open and empty. But every pattern has an impact on other patterns. And so we have to remain open, not just with our own patterning, but with the consequences of how our pattern impacts on others and how they respond. So the key point is always that the ground of our awareness, like the mirror, is open and empty. And if our activity is not arising from this, if it's arising from something more limited and constrained, then it's going to have limiting vibration embedded in it. So the central point is, can we see the true origin of every moment of experience? So in the previous weekend, we spent a lot of time looking at the ground or the foundation or the basis. This is not theory. This is an indication of how to experience the fresh display of the potential of that ground. So luckily he's going to make this much more clear now. So now we're going to look at the section, the result of the three modes. I'm using the word mode to translate the kaya, which means body. In English language, body is not particularly helpful for translating. And mode gives the sense that each of these three is linked with the other. They are, if you like, modes of each other, or they are three modes of the indivisible. So when we talk about the three kayas or the three modes, it's not like 1, 2, 3. It's more like the signification given by the Christian use of the Trinity. So you need to hold in mind that you don't have one go from one to another to another. So then he says, Omani Pemi Hung Hri, the mantra of Chenrezig. We can take this as a sign that we should have compassion on ourselves if we find this difficult to understand. So then Rinpoche also said, the one essential point we Dharma practitioners need to know is the instantly present three modes through the ground, path, and result. So if you become interested in Tibetan culture and Tibetan art, you see many, many different statues and paintings of different Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. As soon as you have a depiction of these three aspects, they are separated. So we have the Dharmakaya, the mind of the Buddha, and in the lotus family, that's represented by Amitabha. Then we have the Sambhogakaya, the radiant, expressive enjoyment mode, and that's represented by Avalokiteshvara or Chenrezig. And then we have the Nirmanakaya, the apparitional manifesting form, and this is represented by Padmasambhava. So you might have Amitabha at the top of the painting, Chenrezig in the middle, and Padmasambhava at the bottom. In the Christian church, you might have a painting of the dove for the Holy Spirit, and then God the Father with a beard, and then Jesus on the cross. These are the problems of representation. If you were to paint Amitabha and then on top of him paint Chenrezig and then on top of him paint Padmasambhava, then it wouldn't be very clear. Although people have tried in many different cultures, it's very difficult to represent the simultaneity of these three. So he's saying here, these three modes are instantly present. They are not constructs. Now, you can read, in English anyway, translations of Mahayana texts where they write about the Sambhogakaya as the reward body. And that's linked with the idea of the accumulations of merit and wisdom. But that is not the view of Dzogchen. Now, this is very tricky. In absolute truth, there is emptiness. Emptiness has no shape or color, no front, no back. There is no hierarchy in emptiness. And there is no causation in emptiness. Emptiness is not caused by anything. It is the source or the ground or the basis. On a relative level, if you look carefully at any phenomena you see, a person, a cat, a car, you will see that there is no inherent existence to that item. It is a composite with factors manifesting in time for a while before they vanish. Everything is empty. Empty of what? Empty of an individual defining self-essence. That is to say, the carness of the car is not intrinsic, but situational, contingent. Emptiness is it's not anything. We are always here at the limit of language. It's talked of as the basis or the foundation or the ground or the source. But we have to be careful not to relate that to the foundation of building a house. In the openness, the undefinability of awareness of the mind itself, experience arises. Just as the mirror is not filled with an image of itself, and this is what allows it to show the images of its not self. And yet it is as if these images of its not self are its images. So in the same way, our thoughts, feelings, experiences are like these reflections arising. These, for each of us, these are the unique specificities of how the ground manifests as us. We can't say that there's only one ground or that there are many different grounds. In a sense, the world of the ground is a world of silence. It doesn't stand in opposition to anything. And so the light of the ground manifests as this diversity of appearance, an integrated field of experience devoid of any things. It is pure appearance, and that's why it's the clarity. Like the reflection in the mirror, there's nothing there to get hold of. Then, in the manner of a dream, we, in our embodiment, move in this field of light as part of the field of light, as an expression of compassion or communication or connectivity. We are the energy of the ground moving in the field of disclosure of the ground. So when we say, I will work for the liberation of all sentient beings moving in samsara, these sentient beings are actually, if we see clearly, they are actually always already within the mirror. There are no sentient beings wandering in samsara. But the clarity of the mind, when obscured or darkened by ignoring the ground, manifests as the seeming separate entities that we are habituated to perceive. Then it is as if there are sentient beings to be saved. So it's not that there are people to be taken from some hellish war zone into a place of peace, but rather all sentient beings are wrapped in a nightmare. What is occurring for them is not real, but it appears to be real because of their belief. So if you had never seen a mobile phone before and someone started to show you a film inside the phone, you'd be amazed. It looks as if people have been shrunk and put into a little plastic box. How do they get there? Oh, there are invisible rays coming down through the sky. No, it's not possible. Look, they're in this plastic box. Because we don't see the connection of the electronic messages. In the same way, we don't open to the empty ground of whatever is arising and then imagine that there are self-existing entities, including ourselves. So he's saying that it's important to understand how these three indivisible aspects of ourselves, our enlightened being, manifest, and it's best to do this through understanding the ground, path, and result. And it's difficult because there are many words here. If you try to grasp them too tightly and then you compare them and say, but another teacher said something different, what does this really mean? Then you get a big headache and no clarity. So it says, moreover, the ground having the two purities is known as the intrinsic mode or dharmakaya. This means he's going to be talking about the basis of your awareness. So he says, what does this mean? The first purity is called primordial purity or kada in Tibetan. So it says, from beginningless time, the ground has been intrinsically pure. Means in its unoriginated origin, there is no defilement, which means no otherness to the ground. Emptiness is infinite. Everything is within emptiness, because everything is empty. Emptiness cannot make emptiness dirty. If you have a glass of clean water and another glass of clean water, if you pour the waters together, one water doesn't dirty the other. The infinity of the ground doesn't stand in relation to anything else. He says its essence is empty, devoid of self-substance. So I feel that I am James, and I can tell you about my life in a way that points to the fact that I'm not somebody else. But if today I go out and I'm hit by a motor car, and the police decide there has to be an autopsy, the body is laid out on a on a metal surface, and the scalpel goes in to open up Mr. James. And where is the essence of James inside this body? In the heart, the lungs, the bowels. I have no self-substance. Self, what we call self, is a description of formativity or forming. So say there was a choir, some people going to sing together. And the leader of the choir takes out their tuning fork, ding. Now the singers hear this note. This is a kind of reference point. The sound has already vanished into silence, but the choir starts to form into how they sing with that vanished reference point. So the sound coming from the tuning fork is a point of reference that can't be referred to out there because it's gone. Nonetheless, it functions as a kind of organizational factor. So this is how our sense of self operates. It's not something you can find as an entity. And yet, if you take it as a reference point, that internal dialogic movement brings about an organization of your modes of manifestation. And that leads to a pre-organization. So according to the tuning fork, the orientation of the choir is pre-organized. They could have used a different tuning fork to get a different note. So here he's saying that there is no such thing operating in the mind itself. It's not forming around anything. Moreover, it's not forming for anything. There is nothing to find there. It is free of all interpretations. It means whatever I say about it to try to give some sense of it, and all these different examples, they won't exactly take you there. It's as if I set up a company here and I'm selling tickets for a spaceship, and you have bought a ticket and the spaceship will take you to the sun. It's like that. The spaceship will burn up before it reaches the sun, and all the words and concepts will dissolve in space before you awaken to the Dharmakaya. So when we're listening and when we're practicing, we have to be aware of grasping and trying to get the truth. It's not that kind of truth. It's like the truth of the sky. The sky is open. And some of you know this practice whereby we go and we open ourselves to the sky. When the sky is blue and open, we sit outside, if possible on the side of a hill, and relax our gaze into the vastness of the sky. You don't catch the sky, you don't get the sky, and yet in some way you get the sky. This is sky, wow. You can't say anything about it, but nonetheless, you were there. So he says it's not an object for the intellect, and it transcends causes and conditions. Everything we see around us has causes and conditions. The weather, the sequence within which the flowers start to blossom, all of these can be understood in a sequential way. The intelligence that we have that allows us to make sense of the world and organize the things that we see doesn't operate in relation to the mind itself. It is beyond thought and expression. So yesterday we were looking at the ego and how it relies on our thought interpretation. The power of the ego is to know something and on the basis of that to do something. This is our consciousness, our nampashepa, our knowing, our capacity to know something. This capacity cannot take you to the Dharmakaya. So all the thinking and so on that you do is if you do it positively, helps to clear away some of the confusion in your mind, but it cannot open the door itself. The purity of the ground is clarity as the sphere of awareness. So if we do the Guru Yoga and we're sitting, we relax, all kinds of arisings are coming and going, coming and going. When we see this is the brightness or the play or the display of the potential of awareness, and it's not the indication of something. So if you have a thought about tomorrow is Monday, I have to do this, if you enter into the semantic content of the thought, it becomes a sign indicating pathways of meaning and intention. But if you remember from the previous weekend, the second level of how ignorance displays is through semiotic interpretation. That is to say, we take up a word which becomes the name of something. And when we use the word, it seems that it's giving us access to that something. Tomorrow is Monday. Where is Monday? The future hasn't come. When you wake up tomorrow morning, do you experience an immediate intrinsic Mondayness? Monday is a conventional title. And in this culture, we have Saturday and Sunday usually as holidays. So Monday has the connotation of, oh, back to work. When I lived with Rinpoche in India, the holiday day was Wednesday. So that's just the local convention. So the sphere of awareness is not clouded by any projections of value and meaning. It is free of knowledge. Some people translate awareness, rigpa, as knowledge. They do that in order to give me a headache. I can't think of any other reason why they would do it. Awareness is not knowledge. You can know where your shoes are, but you can't know where your mind is. In some meditation practices, your mind is in your heart chakra. In others, your mind is like the sky. So then he says, from beginningless time, the ground, that is to say, the ground of your own awareness has been intrinsically perfectly pure. Everything you say about it will be false. The purpose of teaching is the kindness of the Buddhas. We have to remember Garab Dorji, first transmission was direct mind to mind. Then it was through symbols. And thirdly, it's through words coming in our ear. It's already a little bit foggy. If we went outside and looked at the sky and you really are open to that, maybe you wake up. The sky doesn't say anything to you. At a certain point, your mind also becomes silent. Now you could just feel spaced out, or you could awaken into that unborn spaciousness. But generally speaking, we use words, and words depend on signs, and signs require interpretation, and the one who does the interpreting is your dualistic ego consciousness, which is why we have to be very careful and precise. And then the second aspect of purity is stainless purity. So he says the stains of the adventitious three forms of ignorance are removed by the three modes of awareness. So yesterday he's saying we have this unconditioned or authentic openness. This is the Dharmakaya. Then you have the authentic clarity. This is the Sambhogakaya, and the authentic participation or pervasive compassion. This is the Nirmanakaya. And these three remove the obscuration of the three levels of ignorance. So it's very useful to go back and read the text from the previous weekend in relation to what he's seeing here, and then you see for yourself. When you see directly, you don't have to imagine. When you don't see directly, you imagine. Ignorance is imagining. The Dharmakaya or awareness is seeing. So when these veils of ignorance or non-attention are removed, then you have the void clarity of awareness free of obscuration. One's innate clarity is raw, steady, naked, single, unconfined, and alone. Raw indicates it's not cooked, it's not prepared, it's not made in any way. And these other terms we looked at yesterday. And then he says this innate purity is unimpeded without an inside or outside. Then he says this is known as the intrinsic mode having the two purities. Intrinsic purity, the purity which is there from the very beginning, is the basis for stainless purity. I will clean my cup after drinking the tea. The nature of the glaze on the cup is that it doesn't absorb. The stain of the tea forms on the surface of the glaze. When I look inside my cup just now, I see these marks of the tea. My cup is dirty. I take it to the kitchen and I clean it with a little scrubbing thing with some detergent. Now it is clean. It is only clean because it was never really dirty. If I was using a paper cup, the kind you use for a takeaway coffee, it would be difficult to clean it properly because the fluid is being absorbed into the material. So from the very beginning, your mind has been completely pure. Whatever limitations you have that seem to manifest in your personality, behavior, and so on, only appear to be there. To follow the example, it is as if they are on the surface of your mind. They are extrinsic, and they have no power to remain. So if you do tantric vajrasattva practice and you say the mantra and have the dutsi, the liberating elixir flowing through you, he purifies you because you are pure from the very beginning. If you were really contaminated, that would not be possible. So that is very, very important to know. That's why you should never insult yourself, nor insult other people. If somebody does something that hurts you and you say, oh, that's a terrible person, there is no person there. This is like a mirage that you see. This is a terrible mirage, but it's just a mirage. Like looking in the mirror and saying, this is a horrible reflection. There is nothing horrible in the mirror. So you have to look yourself again and again and observe how you think about people, how you think about yourself and your life, and that you yourself create the sense of being limited and defiled and requiring a lot of work. Ego consciousness is absorbent. Awareness is not absorbent. If you try to clean your ego, it will take a long time. But if you see the intrinsic emptiness of all that you take to constitute your ego self, then you will find primordial purity. So we live in a world of judgments and opinions. We generally live in seemingly democratic countries where political parties have different views, and they fight each other to see who can have the power to make their view the truth, at least for a while. You don't have to completely avoid hearing these opinions, but you have to hear them as opinions. An opinion is a pattern. So it's like going to a kindergarten and looking at the paintings the children have been making. There's some big mass of red and then black lines over it. And the child says, "This is my mother's car." So this is exactly the same as a politician saying, "We believe in social justice for all." It's just a picture. There is no reality. The word reality indicates delusion. There are no things. Samsara is unreliable. When we rely on the unreliable, then we cheat ourselves. So that's why we should know that we are cheaters. If you have a habit of telling lies and cheating, zip. It's that simple. You don't seduce yourself with an endless interpretation of the world. And then you can catch these interpretations as they arise, and you see this is unreal, but it will function if we believe in it. The principal factor of impurity is belief in reality. Everything is illusion. Okay, so if we take a break now, and come back at 1:45, so it means like 22 minutes break. And then we have the last section for today. So we'll have a little break. Good. Good. Okay. So we continue, and now it is about the path. It says the path is the enjoyment mode having the 5 certainties. This is the Sambhogakaya. So then he says, as the clarity of the intrinsic way of one's own awareness as its own aspect, the enjoyment mode abides as the presence of the 5 certainties. He says this applies no matter where one stays on the path of the developing and perfecting procedures. So these 5 certainties indicate the potential of the situation, that these 5 factors he's going to describe are certainly available, reliably available, but they are revealed through our certainty. Again and again, we have to see that in Dharma, it's not talking about fixed entities out there. Everything depends on the mind. The more open and trusting our mind is, the more we see how things are. The more busy our minds are in developing our own ideas, the more cut off we are from what is offered. So he says, the certain place is infinite hospitality, free of all interpretation. These 5 factors now, starting with the place, are the factors required for the transmission of Dharma. The previous part we looked at with the 2 purities, the ground requires no transmission. It just is. But the Sambhogakaya is the showing or the display or the availability of the clarity or brightness of the open, empty mind. So what's translated here as infinite hospitality is in Sanskrit, Dharma Dhatu. Dharma in that sense means appearances, phenomena, whatever could arise. And Dhatu means like a space or a realm or an openness where all these phenomena are occurring. So I am in London. London generally we can say is in Great Britain. Where is Great Britain? We have many words now. We can say it's on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean, or it's trying to get away from Europe. We are a refugee nation. But all of these are identifications according to science, according to what we learn in school and geography. They are conventional titles. So where I live, there is a name to the road. That is something which is applied. When they were building the road, they had to decide on some system for naming the roads. And so this name was applied because of what was happening at that time in people's minds. The name arose due to causes and circumstances. And there is no end to thinking about where we are and whether the city should be developed with a new transport system and so on. But what I hear, see, touch, smell, revealed through the senses. In the realm of the senses, phenomena are moving. This is the Dharma Dhatu. All that can possibly appear arises in the mind. All are equally welcome in this mind. That's why I translate it as infinite hospitality. Everything is welcome without prejudice. But from the point of view of our ego self, we don't see things that way. For example, there are a lot of builders in the street at the moment, and they come early in the morning and they sit in their van and drink a coffee. And because it's cold, they keep the engine running so that the heating on is in the van, which is nice for them in the van, but is putting a lot of fumes into the street. So this is what happens when we locate ourselves with an identification that says, this is my place, my concern, my priorities. And therefore some phenomena are more welcome than others. So for meditators, what this means is whenever you find yourself shrinking into a prejudicial position, you need to relax again. Although I've been living in this road for many years and living in this flat for many years, in no sense is it mine. The building was there before I was born, and it will no doubt be here after I'm dead. I'm just passing through. So when we have the sense of ownership in drawing a circle around I, me, mine, we are acting against the truth of the infinite hospitality of where we are. Because he says this is infinite hospitality free of all interpretation. As soon as we have interpretation, we have bias. The second of the five certainties is the certain teachers are the peaceful and wrathful expression of the innate clarity of awareness. This means the clarity is the virginal presentation of the first freshness, the first bloom of appearance. Everything which is revealed is this immediacy of the peaceful and wrathful deities. In the tantric way, you can see this through the symbolic transformation that they represent of the various limiting factors. But here it indicates the immediate presence, whether things are inviting, as with the peaceful deities, that you move towards them, or difficult so that you move away from them, like the wrathful deities. When we experience this pulsation of liking and not liking, there is already a subtle flavor of identification of entities. The peaceful deities means beautiful, charming, soft, gentle, and so on. The wrathful deities have their particular moods. It means if you stay with the clarity of whatever arises, it is the divine manifestation with many different forms, but always simply empty. And so everything is teaching. The teaching is the showing of what we need to see. When you interpret, when you project your own meanings, you don't see. But if you see, you get the teaching. And then this is your teacher. It's not teaching you about anything. So today there's a lot of wind in London, and if I look up at the clouds, they are moving. If I don't explain to myself about the wind is making the clouds move, and allow my gaze to open into the clouds, there is the vastness of ungraspable movement of color and shape. This is the direct revelation of the ungraspability of the clarity of the mind. Then it says the certain circle are the bodhisattvas in union, yabyum, in sexual union, the ceaseless self-display of awareness. So sexual union represents both non-duality of subject and object and the creative potential of intercourse. So when you look around, how this revelation occurs for you is the self-display, the rigpe rangnang of your own mind. Because the subject and object are appearances. The subject is not self. There is no self. But the illusory self is the appearance of the object, which is always connected, is the illusory appearance of the subject is always connected with the object. And this interplay is the movement of the creativity of the mind. The certain dharma which is taught is the recognition of one's own actuality through its self-display. So this is very important for meditators. What you see, and with that, of course, your emotional response, sensation in the body, thoughts, memories, and so on, this undivided sphere of display, this is your own actuality. This is how you are. So if we go to another language and we talk of primordial purity and effort and instant presence, the mind is empty, open, and its display is ceaseless. And the display is not something theoretical. It is this actuality now, which each of us are living. So the display of your feelings, thoughts, memories, recognition of people in the street, and so on, this is the mind. If you think, oh, I'm sitting in my room looking out of the window at people, then this is not the mind. This is just the delusion of duality. So this display shows the inseparability of the reflection and the mirror. Then the fifth aspect, the certain time, is the abiding of effortless changelessness. This means it is always now. This immediacy of revelation is always just in this infinite opening of now. In the moment of now, what arises is memories, plans for the future, and so on. If it was simply a kind of blank open now, then it would make you stupid to do this kind of practice. But everything is here all at once. And because it's here, it is revealed through participation. So these are known as the 5 certainties of the enjoyment mode. Then he says the result is the apparitional mode having the 5 non-certainties. So the apparitional mode is the Nirmanakaya, which is the energy of our participation moving in the world of movement. And although we are moving in a world of movement, nothing moves. Because this is like a crystal with different facets, or a sculpture. If you walk around a sculpture or a crystal or a tree, each step you take reveals the tree in a different way. What you experience is this, with the idea, oh, this is one way of looking at the tree. So it means I am standing looking at the tree, and because I'm standing here, I see the tree in this way. That's a lot of concepts. But you're open to the tree. As you see, this is it. And if you move, this is it. The tree is not a composite built up with many different pictures. So the apparitional mode gives the sense of not substantiating, not making solid what you see. So he says, with the actualization of the meaning of the unborn intrinsic mode and the powerful flow of the ceaseless enjoyment mode, the various forms of the potential are self-arising and self-liberating. The mind is open. Instantly, there is this. And in my participation in this field of revelation, my movement evokes the arising and passing of formations. So you go for a walk, the potential of the scenery is revealed by whether you're running or walking slowly or talking with a friend and only vaguely noticing what's there. So without effort, as you turn your head, you notice something, it's self-arising, and then it's gone. Now you're moving on. Self-arising, self-vanishing, self-arising, and so on. So because of this potential which is here, we, as the participants, the resultant apparitional mode, we act for the benefit of sentient beings. We do this primarily by being available. We're not busy with a private agenda. Even if we're doing things, we're doing it in space. And therefore, we move with the circumstances. So he's going through them. Thus, non-certainty of place is the ability to go to whatever place in the six realms it's necessary to arrive at for the sake of those who are ready. So on a very general level, we can say many Dharma centers have arisen in the world. As far as I'm aware, Tibetan lamas in India, as the first refugees, were not sending out letters all over the world saying, please invite me. But somehow, according to the rightness of beings, people had an idea. Maybe they see a picture of the Dalai Lama on the television and they become interested in Buddhism and they meet with some other people. There's a Dharma center, they invite a Lama and life goes on. So the availability of the ripeness of the Dharma goes wherever it is required. If the one who is traveling, if the teacher is going because they want to get money or sex with Western women or power, that's not going to be much Dharma. They go to benefit people. How will they benefit people? That will depend. Depends on the capacity and qualities of the people. Some cherries are bitter, some are sweet. Some apples are good for cooking, some are not. You have to look at the specificity of the person and the situation, and then you are responding to that. So the non-certainty of form is the ability to manifest in whatever form is appropriate to educate beings. That means that there is no fixed way of relating. It's not like a military camp where people have to march up and down in a row. And of course, if we only see one version of a person, we tend to over-essentialize that as being their truth. And then you start to think, oh, that is what this person is like. So Siya Lama, very often, especially when it's hot, he was just wearing a small lungi. And when it was very hot, he used to get a heat rash and have very inflamed skin in his armpits. And you see, oh, this is dependent origination. His body is teaching the Dharma. If you have the eyes to see, everything is teaching you the Dharma. So how the person displays depends on the possibility of the situation. The non-certainty of retinue is the ability to be available for whoever needs help, be be they high or low, good or bad. So again, Siya Lama was very interesting in this way because over the years he had various kind of rather dangerous people around him, people who had been soldiers, mercenaries, thieves, and so on. And sometimes he would encourage a mood of madness with a lot of alcohol and people having wild behavior. And then it would suddenly become very tight and peaceful. You can't say, oh, he liked it to be this way or that way. The mood would have a function for a while. And when the function is exhausted, then the mood shifts. This is very important, always to consider there is no inherent identity to us. We are multiple. And when we look in the world at the oppression of people, it is generally led by over definition. There are many cultures where the status of women is low, and people believe, oh, this is the truth. Even when there is some democracy, women are frequently exposed to sexual harassment and attack because people believe, oh, I can do this. I know what they're like, I know what they are for. And you have the same with identity of people by race, by religion, by employment, by intelligence, and so on. So we can see that many of the worst negative tendencies which human beings manifest arise from an over-definition of self and other. And so in the beginning of Dharma, we reflect a lot about compassion and empathic attunement, and we imagine, oh, I could be reborn in that situation. If I am a white racist and I am sure that Black people are inferior, and then I imagine, oh, I could be born with black skin in my next life. I wouldn't want people to think I was inferior, but because I read black skin as a sign, I see it as an indicator of value. I am reading the sign as an indicator of true intrinsic value in the other. So in Buddhism, we're developing pathways of wisdom and compassion to dissolve the insanity of imagining that phenomena could be trapped inside the narrow boxes of our identifications. The non-certainty of Dharma is the ability to teach the different vehicles according to the capacity of different individuals. Now, you can do this in a hierarchical way, starting with the general Buddhist teachings and going up to Dzogchen at the end. Or one can pulse different levels of teaching into the same formation. Because of course, the people who study Dharma are not one person. They have different moods. And particular formations of words will catch and touch us and move us in different ways. Which is why if you always adopt a very serious mood and say we must be respectful to the holy Dharma, you can over limit the frame within which you operate. It's also important to have some jokes and to not be too serious, so that the different aspects of how we are together can come into some kind of syncopation. The non-certainty of time is the ability to appear in whatever time disciples are ready, be it past, present, or future. So this on one level is the magical power of the fully enlightened Nirmanakaya. More generally, it means that the teaching might be about an aspect of the how the personality develops due to causes and conditions. And when you hear this, it might take you back to your own childhood. You're remembering the mood in the family home and how that affected your ability to think, to feel, to act. The teaching is always offering possibilities of connection which arise for ourselves when we read or hear the teaching. Then he says, moreover, the apparitional mode, the Nirmanakaya, has two forms, the supreme form and the multifarious form. The supreme apparitional form has two aspects, the apparitional mode descending from compassion and the apparitional mode ascending through the vehicles. So regarding the first, the apparitional mode descending from compassion, it is the intrinsic mode having the two purities that the innate force of the enjoyment mode having the five certainties arises. Means the openness of the mind allows the display of the potential of the mind. It's not a cause and effect situation. The display of the potential of the empty mind is instant. It's not caused by the ground, but without the ground, it wouldn't arise. So the display of compassion that comes out into the world is because of the display of the multifarious factors which are around us. And this gives rise to the special apparitional manifestations. For example, in the Tibetan Buddhist lineages, particularly in the Kajupa system, many people believe that the Karmapa is the true presence of the compassion of the Buddha. And when he puts on his black hat, this brings into presence the integral qualities of these three modes. Generally speaking, people believe that the Dalai Lama is the Nirmanakaya or the apparitional manifestation of Chenrezig. And if you have a chance to meet these people or manifestations, they're very wonderful. But of course, because they are special, you don't get to see them very often. And then he says, in contradistinction, the apparitional mode ascending the vehicle shows the form of yogis on the path, practicing the path in order to benefit beings. So this is like us. Sometimes we are more open to the openness, and we find ourselves in the surprising spontaneity of our connectivity. At other times, we find ourselves, as it were, trapped in ourselves. We have some idea which catches us, and it constrains and directs how we can be with others. Actually, of course, we don't make any progress on the path because we are limited. The one who makes progress on the path is the apparitional manifestation of our own potential. This is another way of saying you will never get enlightened, because if you are listening to this from your ego self, I am this person, I was born here, and I know what I'm going to have for my lunch. This formation of identity will never be enlightened. It is an impermanent patterning of experiencing revealed through unchanging open awareness. The basis of enlightenment is awareness, not ego consciousness. Ego consciousness is the obscuration. And in the traditional example that is given, if you take a piece of coal and you wash it for a whole year, it won't become white. If you are a small, limited person, you won't become a Buddha. You are already a Buddha. Or in another language, you have Buddha nature. You also have limited, fucked up person nature. If you try to turn the black coal of fucked up person into the white shining form of glorious Buddha, you have a very long road ahead of you. That's why this Lama Chetsangpa is coming to us. He is like the head doctor in the amnesia ward. He comes and he says to me, James, well, let me call you James, because that's what you've got used to being called. But we've done a bit of research and we find that actually you are Buddha. Would you like to come into this actual identity? If you do that, the door of the world is open. But if you stay with wanting to be called James, I'm afraid this little bed will be your home for a long time. So this is what he has been saying to us. You are Buddha. You don't have to pretend to be Buddha. You have to relax and open and see the unchanging ground of everything which manifests for you. Then it says the multifarious or the very diverse apparitional mode has two aspects. One showing the form of beings in the six realms and the other one not showing such forms. The former takes on a form that belongs in the six realms and acts according to the local customs. Thus it teaches by performing whatever is necessary for these beings. So we have the Buddhas of the six realms who appear in the various realms and offer some solace or some benefit. But there is also the fact that when you walk down the street and you see people, you don't know if they are Buddhas or not. When you think that they are just ordinary people, that is the thought in your mind. Maybe they are Buddha. So the encouragement for our practice is to consider everyone we meet is the radiance of the Dharma mind. Everything arises from the ground. Even those beings who do not recognize that they are the display of the ground are the display of the ground. This is why texts say there is not the least difference between samsara and nirvana, because it is what it is, and whether you know that it is what it is or you don't know, it doesn't make any difference because it is what it is. So when you do your practice and you sit, and then gradually you get up, you make a tea or whatever, and you go out into the world, who are you? You are the movement of energy in the field of light. What do you see in the field of light? Light. So someone is walking down the street towards you. What you are seeing is the movement of color. You might imagine nice person, horrible person. This is your thought. The thought is not telling you the truth about what is in front of you. So if you stay open to the movement of light, it's not some kind of abstract impressionist mismatch of colors. It is precisely this. There is a pattern. The pattern is there. You can call it a dog, or you don't have to call it a dog. Adding dog doesn't add anything to the pattern. Adding the name dog invites further conceptualization, which doesn't add anything to the pattern. Even in terms of it being a dog, the fact that you know a lot about the history of Labradors doesn't really do much for the Labrador. So in terms of the apparition, we are apparition, everything is apparition. The great Buddhas are not better apparitions than us. They are more stable as apparition than us. Illusion is neither improved or not improved. It just is illusion. When you believe that an illusion is somehow real, it's still illusion. So the more you stay with the illusory apparitional nature of manifestation, the more these undivided, unseparated, collaborative three modes of the Buddha are revealed as you. And then you can go about in your ordinary life, going to the shops, taking care of old parents and so on. So these Buddha, you can be in a harmonious form or in a contradictory form. So the example of this would be to be an honest man in the land of thieves. But in order to do that, at first, the apparition would appear as a thief. As in the story of Padmasambhava when he left Tibet and went to Zangdopalri, which was the palace of the great king of the cannibal demons, the Rakshasa. he arrived in his illusory body of light and merged into the body of the king of the demons, transferring the mind of the king to a pure land. So now Padmasambhava was appearing as a very vicious demon. And in the morning, the servants came and the demons shouting at them and being his usual angry self. But gradually, like turning a dimmer switch, his behavior changed. He became a little softer. He spoke more gently. He paid more attention to the people around him. And because he was the king, everyone around him was also making these subtle accommodations without even recognizing it. And so gradually the kingdom became peaceful. That's a very skillful way of operating. The apparitional mode can also appear in a form which is not that of being, so it can be like a bridge over a river, or a tree, or a statue, many forms of the 5 elements. So this is very sweet, because this is another way of encouraging us not to be asleep in our own lives. It means when you walk over a bridge, how amazing that there is a bridge. When you go in a park and there is a bench, how amazing that there is a bench. You can look with fresh eyes. Then you see, you receive what is there. But when you think, oh yeah, I know where this is, I know what I'm doing, there is a kind of dullness that goes over. And due to this dull way of looking, we develop the cataracts of ignorance. So we should bring the enjoyment quality of the second mode of the mode of enjoyment. We should bring that into our everyday life to really appreciate and enjoy everything we encounter. And this is also deepened when we bring the flavor of the first mode, the intrinsic mode, with its freshness into the situation. This, only this. Each moment is just this. And so the arising of the concepts, I know about this, this is what it's called, or I've been here before. When these concepts arise, we should let them move through the mind like clouds in the sky without causing any trouble. How our life is depends on us. When we have these teachings, we can do the practice. You can do the Guru Yoga twice a day, 5 times a day, just for short periods of time, and keep opening to include whatever is occurring in the spaciousness of the mind. With ignorance, we have splitting and setting one thing against another. This path is a path of integrity. We're not integrating because everything is already integrated. But we follow the flavor, the mood of integrity, and avoid splitting, projecting, judging. If we remember the 5 certainties, the first is the place, which is the Dharma Dhatu. Everything is already included. Open more, enjoy more, appreciate more. So then he says, this concludes the brief explanation of the manner of realizing the threefold result. The ground intrinsic mode having the 2 purities, the path enjoyment mode having the 5 certainties, and the result apparitional mode having the 5 non-certainties. Please keep this in mind. So I wish you a good study of the text. Keep going through it if you have the time and interest, and good practice going ever deeper and wider. And we'll continue with the text, the final part of it, on the weekend of the 17th and 18th of April. And on these days, both days will be 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. London time. So I hope this is useful to you in your lives. And thank you to our translators today and to Pedro for holding the frame in the background. And so hopefully I will see you then. But now Milton is going to say something about a new Instagram page.
So, hello everyone, just to notice that there is an Instagram page named Simply Being Sangha now, where news and everything regarding James' publications and teachings will be shared on a daily basis. So if you have an Instagram account already and you're into that, you can check it by typing Simply Being Sangha. And therefore we can remain connected in this another way. Okay?
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, and see you in a month or so. Bye for now. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.
So,
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Dankeschön, James.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Dankeschön.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Danke.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Gracias, gracias, gracias.
Hi, James.
Hi.
Bye.